you're about to experience a new way to thrive in martial arts by exploring who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you believe in. It's time to rise, because this is where we challenge and say no to outdated industry norms and say yes to change, so that we create a healthier, happier, and thriving martial arts community. I'm your host, Laurien Zurhake. Welcome to the Rise to Thrive podcast. In this exciting episode, I have the privilege of hosting two COA experts, namely Cal Jones and Greg Souders. They get to discuss ideas they normally don't get to discuss on camera with each other. We discuss diverse topics from positive gym environment outcomes for using COA, to how to warm up your students for competition, to train the person in front of you, and how to keep your knees safe in stand-up. The biggest debate today is about representative design. Although Greg and Cal agree 99% of the time, like in academia, only because you are in the same field does not mean that you always see things the same way. And challenging each other's perspectives is how we advance our knowledge and expertise. On this note, I, as the host, take full responsibility for the fact that some parts of this debate got heated. After all, I asked specific questions where I knew they would strongly disagree. Without further ado, let's start learning and dive right in. Welcome, Greg and Cal. I'm so happy you guys made time to discuss with me today, or rather probably me listening to you guys about ecological dynamics and COA. I think this is one of the first times that we have two COA experts that are talking together. Usually it's more about, is COA working or not? But now we're just going to go deep into practice design. And as in academia, sometimes people can be in the same field but still disagree or have different perspectives. So I really would like to highlight, because there are many ways of doing things, and I think that different perspectives actually foster growth and that we get further, because Alex and I were doing this for 5 years and I still feel that we were only at the beginning. So we're also very, very looking forward to learning. So let's just start with the first question, maybe a little bit different than what we'll be discussing later. Namely, we found COA through trauma-informed coaching. We noticed that their nervous system needs to remain in rest and digest. So we learned, okay, we need to keep the tasks or like the stakes low. And we found gamification. And for that, ecological psychology and ecological dynamics. What we also noticed was that the gym culture just improved dramatically. That the ego kind of changed from, oh, I want to show I'm better than my partner, to, oh, I want to make each other better. Oh, that was awesome. I want to figure it out. My first question to you guys is, have you also experienced similar changes in what happened in your culture, your gym culture?
Do you want to take it first, Cal, or do you want me to go?
Sure, yeah.
Why not? In all honesty, I've kind of coached this way forever. So before I was cognizant of it being a constraints-led approach, I was pretty well informed on teaching games for understanding. So I've always sort of gamified most of the stuff that I do. So the culture's always been pretty laid back. We're a really recreational club. You know, we every couple of years we'll go and compete in like a Welsh national competition, which is like pretty small fry. You know, we're a population of 3 million people. It's not big. And they perform well enough. Yeah, we're fairly recreational. So I suspect anybody who is a bit of a douchebag probably isn't going to be too attracted to my, hey guys, how are you? Laid back, chill approach. So it's never been an issue for us, in all honesty.
Yeah, so I mean, we're a little bit of the opposite. I mean, our school is mostly geared towards trying to create elite level or high level players. Though this doesn't mean our gym isn't filled with hobbyists, because it mostly is. I would say about 10% of our culture or less is people who would take it very, very seriously. But for us, what's been interesting is the culture around competitiveness and how to make that culture more healthy. The environment that I came from was a very competitive culture and wasn't the healthiest. So that was a central concern for mine when I was developing my own. So the idea of making each other better through being competitive with one another. So beating each other is okay. Losing is okay. But the idea is like, man, next time you're going to try to win that game. Next time you're going to try to win that game. And we use a healthy level of competitiveness to keep that competitive sharp, so people don't feel emotionally run down by the demands of competitive practice. So yeah, it's helped me control that quite a bit.
Yeah, I also noticed that for us, when we onboard new people, they learn through the games to scale up and down so much quicker that we have within the month. Everybody could train with each other, regardless of size and strength. And that we didn't have before prior when we were still technique based. And that I find makes it so much easier to really welcome new people in.
Yeah, for us, I think exposure to the feeling of competitiveness is really important. We had a young lady who came in and started with us. Did a class, and all we were doing was a simple hand fighting game where the objective was to have more hands on your opponent than they have on you, specifically focusing on wrists and elbows. That was it. And after that initial round, I saw her getting a little bit upset, and so I immediately recognized that she was having an issue. Had someone else take her class, pulled her to the side, and she had a very emotional experience. She had never been grabbed competitively like that before, and she was with another lady, so it wasn't like a male-female dynamic there. But I realized how traumatizing it was for her because she had never been put there, and so this is probably was my first experience dealing with that, and understanding that that is somebody's first experience. I think is very important when designing games for new players to make sure they understand that this is the way it feels. But if something feels off, we can change it or say something.
Yeah, I mean, that's of course where I come in with the trauma from coaching, is that you can really create the best games. Actually, we had a self-defense course really specifically designed for women with that. And there we did, when we were teaching technique, there we always did games because I thought, yeah, self-defense, a technique doesn't really work. And so within 8 times, they got so good so quickly compared to the people we were still teaching technique. I'm like, huh, why are they not? And that's like how these things started making sense in our brain. And indeed, when for some being grabbed physically, it's a lot. It's for some people indeed a very simple pushing game is already full blown sparring, and that's something for other people that's like, huh, but that's just nothing. Yeah, but for some people that's already full blown sparring, and I think especially with the games you can dial back so easily that also for them there is something that they can feel safe, and from there usually in no time they thrive.
For sure, I agree.
All right, let's go into the nitty gritty. Also, the first one. So I know, Cal, you're big on points. And
Yes,
if
indeed.
I am not mistaken, Greg, you're not. And
Yes.
I would like to ask Cal first to explain also to the listener why you use points as a mode to help with decision making and skill acquisition. And then afterwards, of course, I would like to hear Greg's perspective on why you don't use them and what your alternative would be regarding decision making and skill acquisition.
Yeah, sure. Essentially, they're one of the most common task constraints in the CLA, like in every single sport. It's really, really prevalent and predominantly used. So, like if you, Bible to hand, if you flick through this thing, the Constraints That Approach book, they have a list of task constraints for loads of different sports, and in every one, it's point systems. The utility of a point system essentially is we can start to constrain tasks in such a way that there is a focus of attention. We can get people to explore a specific solution without closing the door on everything else. So what I mean by that is there is an inherent compromise that we make in the constraints-led approach, where we sacrifice representativeness, which is an awful word to say, for more repetitions, right? So I can take a slice of the game, I can like declutter it so that we're just looking at one little thing. As long as there is still a variable that we're attuning to, that we are coupling our action to specifying information, we can sacrifice some of that representativeness. The problem is, if we don't start scaling back up and calibrating that skill, the thing that we've explored might not transfer in a more representative environment, right? So we're playing, a classic example would be somebody is chest to back on me, they have the hooks in, and they have a seatbelt grip. And we're going to play a game where I need to remove your bottom hook, scooch my hips out from between your knees, and come back on top, right? We want to explore the behaviors of not rolling away and giving turtle and letting them get you back. If I played that as a practice task, we've constrained our way to the point that the representativeness of the task is compromised. It's not fully representative. It's not representative enough, really. But what it does is it gives me more time on task for solving the second phase, actually getting the foot off. If I played that task where the person on my back is allowed to strangle me or arm lock me from the very, very beginning, I'm going to get very few opportunities to shed the foot and explore getting my hips out from the knee line. So we've made that compromise in losing some fidelity in how we've designed the task so we can have more repetitions. As long as we start adding that information back in so we can start to calibrate the skill we've started exploring, it's not a problem at all. The use of points is because we can start to nest affordances together, right? We're looking at ankle pick this week. We've played a bunch of tasks that can create the conditions that ankle picks are an affordance we can start to explore and exploit. I then want to start adding in more representative and more representative and more representative tasks. So at the end, we're almost in like a conditioned sparring game, right? Where I might more heavily reward an ankle pick. So any takedown scores you a point, but an ankle pick itself will score you 5. So all we're doing is we're shining a big old spotlight on ankle pick, and you're getting to explore the affordances that emerge and decay and cascade off ankle picking. When I go to ankle picking and you step the ankle I'm attacking away, does that give me opportunities for transitioning into a go behind? Does it let me explore snapping you down? All of these affordances are nested. So by saying you can only do the thing, we're not using our constraints as a handrail. It becomes a handcuff, and they don't get to explore nested affordances in any depth at all. By using a point system as a focus of attention, we can just constrain people's behaviors, which is what we want, right? The other thing that is super valuable is to encourage certain reactions from our opponent so that we can start to explore things in more depth, right? So let's say we're playing an outside passing game, and I've noticed that we're playing in a rule set where if somebody gets past my legs and pins me, they will be rewarded with points, like in actual BJJ, right? But if I roll up into turtle and you attack my turtle, you don't get points. So I might want to encourage the bottom player to explore that as a response, and I might want the top player to be aware that they can pin or they can go chest to back. So if I say it's 5 points for your partner if they get chest to chest after outside passing, 1 point if they get chest to back, well, the bottom player is really going to explore the utility of, no, my guard's being passed, this is not attainable anymore. I will turtle and see if I can defend from a more defensible position where I haven't conceded points. And this player, the person who is passing, gets to explore all of those nested affordances of what happens once they are past their partner's legs and their partner is taking that action. How can they couple actions to take advantage of it? Yeah, it's just focus of intention and attention task.
Right, thank you. Thank Greg.
So there are two things there that I would have a strong disagreement with. So the first is the nature, as you describe, representative design, which I'll highlight just a little bit, but we'll probably have to go deeper into that because my pushback is going to be more specific. And then, of course, the idea of value systems being strong enough constraints on attention. So I don't think that you're discussing whether something is either more or less representative. I think what you're discussing is whether something is more general or specific. Representative design is not mutually exclusive with specificity. So we could have a representative game that is high in specificity, or we could have a representative game that is low in specificity. So the example that you gave of the chest to back contact game, where one player's objective was to separate the feet or foot and put the back on the mat, and if there is resistance, if both players have an objective that fight each other, the information source is there. The actions you're having to perform are part of the environment. If there are multiple ways to win, like get your back on the floor or turn to face, we have multiple affordances. And of course, if it's competitive, it's emotionally salient. So that game would be 100% representative. However, because we have constrained it to a degree at which only a few solutions could be used to solve the problem, it would be less specific. Or in this case, as it relates to back escapes, too specific. So I think the only thing that we change in representative design in the scale is how much exploration we do or how much exploitation we do or how general or how specific it becomes. And we can go further into that if you'd like. Now, as far as the value system goes, the claim that you make that the value drives attention is, I think, reducing the complexity of what drives intention and attention down to a degree that we don't see. So, for example, I don't feel like the boundary conditions on abstract ideas like value pull attention strong enough in urgent situations. So let's imagine we're dealing with people who don't have the skill set present to give them a value system. The other attunement and coordination issues they're dealing with, especially if they're newer players, are going to be too strong as pulling attention, that we won't be able to use the idea of value to search the space. And we see this all the time when we're trying to design practices for individuals. And I actually challenge, and I challenge anyone who brings this value system up, because everyone like, Cal use value system, you don't. And I get these messages in my DM, why do you guys do things differently, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, look, just film it. Tell people these points mean this and these points mean that, and then film it and watch where their intention and attention goes. You will not see people driving towards the abstract values you've given each position.
Yeah, no, shock of shocks. I disagree. Essentially, we're in a position that this is, as I say, is probably the most common constraint that is used in the constraints-led approach. I've watched national hockey coaches deliver sessions. I've watched rugby coaches deliver sessions. I've seen papers that have been submitted, like the guys who are at the cutting edge of the literature on this talk about using points as a constraint to refine and like guide attention so that people's search spaces are done. Again, I very much agree. People should record it, or they should just try it, utilize it, and see if you can actually get people to behave in certain ways. I mean, we're in a sport where there are point systems, right? If I'm passing and I have the opportunity of going into mount, I'm probably going to go into mount because I get more points for it.
This is untrue.
You don't think that if I have an opportunity to pass into side control or pass into mount, I would choose to go to mount?
For sure. I know this to be true.
Okay.
So they've done statistical analysis on what scores the most in combat sports in general. They've done it for jiu-jitsu. They've done it for wrestling. And we don't see the point system bear out where most of the attention and intention goes. What we see are the physics at play and the game itself being the central driving factor. And we also see the level of urgency being the central driving factor. So, for example, what affordances would be more available in a 2-minute time scale would change on a 5-minute time scale, change on a 10-minute time scale. What scores, what's available, that relationship is more important than the value of the score itself. So, for example, in collegiate wrestling, they're the most scored attachment that in history is the single leg. But in international freestyle wrestling, the single leg is not awarded. The leg tackle is not awarded as much as a upper body throw, for example. But we see more single leg attachments than upper body throws across the board statistically. And the reason we do that is because, again, the physical boundary conditions present in the game apply more pressure on the system than the points themselves. And in fact, you're going to see either more or less 5-point throws based on another constraint that no one even talks about. Is there a push out? If there is no push out, you will not see any, because there's no reason to fight towards the center. If there's no reason to fight towards the center, there's not enough forward drive to afford upright posture and those types of throws. So again, it's not the points that draw the attention. It's the physical boundary conditions set within the game, set against the urgency of the time scale being used. And of course, this is all relative to the capacity of the individual. If the individual doesn't have the capacity to even to go towards those scores regardless of their value, they will not perceive the affordances. So,
for sure. Essentially what you've described is what are more common ways of scoring rather than the attractability of certain types of scoring scenarios, right? If my partner was asleep, they've passed out, and I have got past the line of their legs, would I go to side control or would I go to mount? All conditions being equal, I would be a bit of a moron if I decided not to go and get myself into mount and get more points. My intention is framed around, can I get to the thing that scores me more points? If in passing they are defending the thing that would score me more points, I can still explore how those affordances are nested and take the less points. So a point system is just a focus of attention, right? There are more 3-point kicks done in rugby than there are tries, but people are trying to do tries. That's what they're looking to try and do. The scoring systems...
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Cal.
That's okay. Would you like to speak?
I talk quickly. I have to not talk so quickly.
I'm going to Mikey Musumeci you. Every time you speak, you have to do a shot.
Yeah. I'll drink my coffee when you're talking. So
so again, as I say, it's a really well-established thing in the literature that point systems as a way of directing people's attention in search space is really, really commonly and frequently used.
Sure, but
The,
I'm sorry. I was responding to that. I'm sorry. God damn.
but essentially, the way that we can utilize points can be really variable. So if I'm using it as a handcuff to say this is the only thing that scores you points, then that's a really detrimental constraint. As with all constraints, if I'm really limiting your options, you don't get to see the consequences of you attempting to fulfill that affordance, right? So the point system literally is just saying, hey, look over there. If we're playing in a game where I'm just trying to get you to pass guard and I want you to explore outside passing, we're looking to try and facilitate your exploration of outside passing as a thing. If I say you get 5 points for an outside pass, but 1 for a pass that goes through the legs, hopefully, and this, I mean, I've done this for a long, long time, and I see this week in, week out, people will explore the utility of how they can go around the outside of the legs. When their opponent defends in such a way that going around the legs isn't the most beneficial option, it's not the affordance that is probably the most available, they'll pass through the legs. They'll look to exploit that. They'll look at the relationship between going through the legs and how it can lead to outside passing. They'll look at the relationship between outside passing and where their opponent frames themselves and how that leads to other passes. That's super important. The other thing, just before I let Greg talk, sorry, is this difference between representativeness and specificity. So in the literature, representativeness is just a sliding scale where we have less representative and more representative. Specificity is essentially talking to what the information that we're coupling to is within a practice task, right? So we have a thing called action fidelity and functionality. So functionality is how closely aligned is the behavior of the person in the environment to the way that they would behave in a competition. So if I'm playing a task where my opponent is trying to achieve a certain thing and the thing that they're trying to achieve isn't representative at all, it's just a nonsense behavior, I'm learning to solve a problem that doesn't exist in the sport. It's low functionality. It's not very specifying because of that, which means that it's not representative. Action fidelity is essentially how closely aligned is the way we are solving this problem with the way that we could solve this problem in a competition. So as an example, I play a turtle game mainly with my kids because it's funny, where I put a beanbag underneath a player and they have to prevent their opponent from, under a player in turtle, I should say, and they have to prevent their opponent from pulling the beanbag out. So they're just learning to close down the space underneath them. They're denying lapels and denying open elbows. It's a fun little game. One of the ways that I've seen children solve this problem is to lie down on their belly behind their partner and sneak a hand through the legs and pull the beanbag out. Brilliant. Great problem solving. Well done, you little swine. But that solution doesn't have action fidelity, because if I had reached underneath my opponent to grab hold of their lapel in that way in a competition, they'd just arm lock me, right? It's a really poor position to be in. So we need to accommodate for action fidelity is the behavior that we are using comparable to a behavior you would use in competition, and functionality is the information we are coupling to more representative of the environment that we're in. We can slide up and down that scale so we can get the same degree of specificity, but we're compromising representativeness. So something we're in X guard and I'm trying to get hands or hips to the floor. Specifying, my opponent's trying to maintain posture, so I'm coupling my action to specifying information. It's not representative because I've not said that they can shed grips. I've not said that they're allowed to pass. I've not said that they can just toe hold me. So we're sacrificing representativeness, but maintaining specificity.
But that's incorrect. I'm sorry. I've talked about this with Rob Gray quite a bit. He actually agrees. He says he doesn't believe either something is more or less representative. He thinks it is or it isn't. And so I'm in deep agreement with him there. So let me give you an example of why. So let's imagine that I'm competing. I'm in a competitive environment. I have 30 seconds not to fall, and I'm in X guard and I'm on top. If my hips hit the ground, the other guy gains an advantage and I lose that match, I'm going to have to stay there and not fall. Would you say that the actions I take relative to the demands of that situation are not representative of the entire game?
Sorry, I'm muting when I'm not speaking so that I'm not tempted. Yeah, so no, they're not representative of the game. They have
But
a degree of
I'm in a live
representativeness.
performance environment. I'm in a live performance environment. I'm making decisions based on the current situation I'm in, the time demands I'm operating under, the rules and context of the sport in which I'm playing. He's fighting me. I'm fighting him. We're fully performing, but I have to not fall. And so all my decisions are centered around that single thing. Do not fall so I do not lose. That is not representative to you.
No, it's representative, but it has fallen down the scale of representativeness.
So in the live performance context, in the middle of the match, it's not representative of what we're trying to do.
No, we've sacrificed representativeness, so we are down the scale of representativeness because you've really limited the actions that that person is capable of doing. I'm not allowed to enter into leg entanglements. I'm not allowed.
No, I don't think you heard my question. I'm in a match, like a live match. I'm at the Pan Ams. We're in the finals. I have to make decisions based on the context in which I'm operating. The bottom player has me an X guard. They're trying to do anything to me to win. I know that if, like, say, it's even, and I feel like I'm going to win the match based on a judge's decision. But if my hips hit the ground, that could be the be-all, end-all. So all my actions are centered around the demands of the situation I currently find myself in. How is that not representative? And I'll tell you why I'm asking you that question afterwards.
So you're saying the only thing that he's trying to achieve is to get your hands or hips to the floor. So
he has to win. He has to make a decision to win the match based on the current context.
Yeah, I guess I'm confused as to what you mean by the question. So you're in competition. So in competition, it is representative because they have all of the behaviors that are open to them, right? Perfect. If we're saying if we use a reduced practice task where they're only allowed to get hands or hips to the floor, that task isn't representative. It has fallen down the scale of representativeness. Awful word.
I don't think this is true. So I'll give you why. So representative design is a way that, and you know this because you've done research on, or you've written papers on representative design, is a way to make the things we do in practice both contextually relevant and ecologically consistent. So representative design is a way that we always make sure that we have an individual performing tasks in an environment that are relative to the demands of the performance environment. Because training is strictly for an increase in performance. That's all training is for. Training is for transfer. That's all training is. We are trying to transfer from what we're doing in training to the performance environment. So all interventions we use are centered around that purpose. And ecological dynamics argues that it must be ecologically consistent, all of our practice tasks. Representative design is a tool that they use to determine whether things are contextually relevant. This is why they have 4 or 5 major points that define representative design. But representative design is also non-specifying, meaning it's not predictive of outcomes. Because the things we manipulate within the context are so complex and interacting that we can't say that low representative will make this happen and high representative will make this happen. The studies have shown that it's non-predictive. So if representative design in itself is non-predictive of outcome, then we can't say that something is, quote, low or high. We can only say that it's either general or specific because it's either representative or it's not. Even if it's, let's say, low. And again, I don't think it's low in acts of fidelity, my example, and I'll tell you why. In the performance environment, we're going to have to make a decision where we resist falling. And that may be the only thing we do for 3 minutes. And so that means my hands and hips cannot touch that mat. So if we design a game where that is the pressure that we have to make the decision under, it is very representative of something that will happen in a competitive setting. So, I mean, that's a fact. That's not even arguable.
I'll argue it. So no, essentially that's just not the case. We're in a position that representative design is a scale. It just is. You can read the Ross Pinder paper on it. You can read the Krauss paper on it.
No, I agree that they say it's a scale.
Yeah, no, it is a scale. So we can look at.
I don't think the scaling is either more or less representative. I think it's
no.
It's either, so, and I think I swear to God, I think they're wrong. Even talking about their own tools. And I know it sounds crazy for me saying this because I'm not a researcher, but when I talked to Keith Davids, one of the things I said to him is I was like, it's really nerve-wracking for me to talk to these researchers, these scientists, because I am not that. And he said, my job is just as important as theirs because I'm doing something that they can't do. So I'm taking their information and I'm applying it. And so I'm going to discover things that they do not know. And through the application process, based on how I've designed the games, this is the conclusion I have come to. I think that even when I read it, I realize that they've gotten some things wrong because they have not actually applied it beyond button pressing tasks or things like this. Then again, as long as the context is relevant based on all the rules of representative design, it doesn't matter. One thing that will change, though, is when you do a lot of exploratory behavior, like you said in the beginning, we're going to have to scale it to be more exploitative or more specific over time because the demands of the performance environment are more specific. So that sliding scale will have to happen, but it's not more or less representative. It's more or less specific.
Yeah, I hope you'll forgive me, but it's just not what the literature says at all. Like, there's a really compelling evidence base in place that shows that less representative tasks, the more we compromise on how representative a task is, how much of the actions that are available in the performance environment we reduce so we can get more time on task, the less transfer and the less retention there is. We know this. I can score practice tasks. There's a thing called an RPAT, one of the things I've written my paper on. I can score how representative a task is. What we can't do yet is, well, what I've not been able to do yet is find a way of identifying whether a thing is non-specifying. So if I'm coupling to an action, I'm sure we'll get to this later, the sort of line holding tasks that I hear a lot of people talking about, a lot of them I think are really broken, purely because they don't have specified information as the thing we're coupling to. But yeah, the scale of representativeness literally is what the literature in constraints-led approach and ecological dynamics talks about. So while I completely agree, there are people that have PhDs that aren't fit to tie my shoelaces. I used to think, oh, they have a PhD, they must know what they're talking about. And you read their papers and they're publishing in their own journals and quoting 96% of their papers they reference are them. And you think, yeah, okay. So no, we shouldn't have this appeal to authority of someone with a PhD has said this, but we absolutely can say over the whole range of time that research has been done on the ecological dynamics and constraints-led approach, all of the findings on representative learning design have ascertained it's a sliding scale and that we can go up and down this scale and add representativeness back in so that we can have better transfer. If you look at the SAP, the skill acquisition periodization, is it? It's, who was it? Farrow and Roberts, I think. Or the POST, the periodization of skill training framework. These are pretty much the gold standard we have on how to design sessions, how we design practice tasks, how we design sessions across a practice, how we design practice tasks across a session. There we go. I'm getting excited. Oh, I love talking about skill. This is literally what the literature says. Is it's not this, you have met the threshold and this is representative, because it's just not true. Playing a game where I'm just trying to get my hands or hips to the floor, I'm not saying it is a bad task. I'm saying there is loads of value there, but we need to calibrate that skill by adding in more behaviors. So if you can start to crab ride me, no, because it's decontextualized. If you can't get into a crab ride, you can't get into a leg entanglement, you can't get into these positions, it lacks representativeness.
Bill, because you're making a strong assumption here. So here's the thing. So let me give you an example. Line holding, because this is something I invented as our sport, right? So time in condition is related to time for effect. So there are sets of conditions that we can create that have the possibility for effects to emerge from the setting of these conditions. So closeness is ultimately the condition that we're imposing upon somebody to increase our amount of control relative to holding someone still enough to do something to their body. So we can use lines of demarcation to determine how close we are to our outcomes. Feet, knees, hips, hands, elbows, shoulders, just as visual points of reference to align our body towards. So my ability to go from, let's say, feet to your knees and hold that line for extended periods of time and you not being able to recover back to a line is an essential skill in and of itself. Because the longer I can set the time scale for that condition, the longer time I have to produce its effect. Now, if we only did it, let's say relative to inside position. So let's say we created a game where top guy had to go feet, knees, stay there. Bottom guy had to get feet inside, hands on ankles, ends the game, right? Now, if this was the only skill, the only way that we scaled the interaction of this skill for 6 weeks and then we put them out in competition, the only transfer would be right there. Anything else that would emerge from that alignment wouldn't be prepared for. So we wouldn't be ready for that. So it's not the single act itself, but the collective act of how we scale that position over 6 to 8 week period, preparing for a performance environment. So let's say we only have the top person ever go feet, knees, right? We could have the bottom person slowly scale up how much they did in order to combat that, like entanglement wins, wrestle up wins, destabilization to the butt wins, any of those win, make it more general, or more open over time. So I think it's a mistake to say that something like an initial stage of learning is less representative.
You've
Because I
just said
don't
it's
think,
less representative, though. That's what you're saying. You're
no,
saying when
no,
the actions are constrained, it's less representative. When
no,
they're
no. I'm saying it's
more
less
open, it's
specific to the demands of the performance environment.
no.
Because
Okay,
here's,
so
so wait, let me, please, I have to make this point to you, because I think we could be, missing each other, because I think our minds might be different for what we think representative design is. So as long as, and this, we can try to talk about this in a more nuanced fashion, but as long as grappling is occurring, and what I mean by grappling is gripping, pulling, pushing, lifting, the act of two bodies literally resisting each other. And if the things we're having to do are part of what's being called for in the game, and this is the loosest definition I can use here, it can be considered representative of the game itself. And the reason we have to see it this way is because we're dealing with people initially walking in who have never pushed and pulled on a body before. So slicing the game up into a small component part and giving simple tasks, even if it's not representative of the whole performance environment, it's still representative of grappling,
yeah,
because
so
we are in fact grappling. And so if we see it the other way, people get confused. And this is what I've experienced traveling around the world trying to teach people about this. If you give them that sliding scale, they will not explore. They won't do different things. They'll just try to replicate techniques because it's not a clear definition for what's happening.
yeah, so I think what's been muddled here is specifying or specific and representative. Like, so I'll give an example. So this is one of the reasons I don't like some of the line holding drills or games that I've had explained to me by people. So I have a second hand thing, not you doing them, but people's interpretation of them, which are very often completely different. So as an example, there's a task I used to try and get to work about a decade ago, where I wanted people to explore this relationship between pinning and transitioning into new pins based on my opponent's escape attempts. So I'm in a side control, you're trying to bridge me over your head. I move to north-south so that I can put a me where there was once not a me and make your escape more difficult. Super important in judo. Moving around somebody in a pin is one of the ways we can just go, I've got to 20, hurrah, I win, right? The game I made, I wanted people to go for as many different pins as they could. So their task was to move from a pin to a pin to a pin to a pin to a pin. The problem, 10 years ago, I was learning. It's not a great task. The problem is the behavior of the person on the bottom is non-specifying. They're not trying to escape. They're not displaying a behavior that exists in the sport. They're just flailing around trying to stop me transition. If I'm in side control, you're probably not going to just try and stop me move to north-south. It is a non-specifying task.
Why do you say that? Why do you say
I'll
you're
just
probably
I'll just
not
finish what
going
I'm saying, and then I'll answer if that's okay, if you don't mind. So it's a behavior that isn't especially representative because people don't do that. They're not going to stop me from moving from a pin to a different pin arbitrarily. It's an arbitrary decision, right? What they're trying to do usually is to escape or move back to a guarded position or achieve some task goal. They're not just here holding on. The easy way of solving it was just a point system, right? I said every different pin the person on the top got, they got a point. But if the person on the bottom escaped, they just changed jobs. So we're really heavily incentivizing escaping as an action for the person that is being pinned rather than incentivizing them to prevent transitions. Escaping is the behavior we need to couple to. The behavior was non-specifying. I was learning to move around an opponent that wasn't behaving in a way that they ever would do in a competition. People don't just sit there and let me pin them. They try and
You've
escape.
never watched grappling before.
This is judo.
This is not true.
This is judo. If I hold you for 20 seconds, I win.
Okay, so I think I have two stronger issues here based on the discussion. Is one is you keep saying things like probably or people wouldn't. So to me, you're trying to interpret the
I'm
motivation.
British. I mean, they don't. Like Americans say they don't.
Of an individual. So you're trying to interpret the emotional motivations of an individual.
No, I'm saying the task goal.
Is,
no, so behaviors are coupled to task goals. If I'm being pinned and I let you pin me, I lose. I do not want to be pinned. If I can escape your pin, the referee's count stops and I can get up and throw you on your head again. So being pinned is a problem. You moving from one pin to another probably definitely isn't my main concern. Sorry. It's a thing I'm not that arsed about. I need to get off my back so that the referee can't get to 20 and I don't lose this game. This person who's being pinned has to escape. It's the only thing they can do. If they allow the pin, they lose. That's one of the rule sets in judo.
So let's use your example of that. How does that argue against line holding, for example? Because you're using that example as being...
Yeah. So I was saying the way that I solved it was to get the bottom player to behave in a way that has fidelity. Fidelity is important. We need action, fidelity, and functionality, right?
Couldn't agree more.
So a line holding game, the version I have had described to me, where somebody is one hip and they have to pass from the hip line to the other side and back and back and back, the behavior of the bottom player isn't representative. Because
what is the behavior of the bottom player?
They're trying to stop me move from one side to the other.
Okay, wait, freeze. In a guard passing context, do people not stop each other from going left to right?
Yeah, for sure. But that action is coupled to specified information. Why do you move from one side to the other? You do it because I have good defensive structures in place and you might want to change your point of attack, right?
Again, this is assuming knowledge. So again, the problem with this discussion is we're not allowing for scalability and why we choose practice interventions. So we choose practice interventions that are representative first and foremost. It has to be representative because we're using CLA. If our practice designs are not representative, meaning they don't have the 4 or 5 things that make a practice intervention representative, then we're not using CLA. So we're in agreement there. The disagreement is, again, lower high representation. I think it's either lower high specificity. I don't think it's lower high representation. I think it's either representative or not. So that's I just have to make that point. That's what I'm standing on.
I think it's a linguistic thing. So what you've described is what the literature talks about as representativeness. Specificity is whether... So specificity is the degree to which the information present in the practice task is what I'm coupling my action to. So if my opponent's trying to punch me in the head and I'm trying to learn to evade punches, this is specifying. This is a thing. If somebody is trying to hit me with a foam pool noodle, it's not specifying. So I'm learning to dodge a foam pool noodle. I don't do combat sports. I don't punch and stuff. I don't know if you noticed from my wonderful head movement. I'm learning to dodge a foam pool noodle. It's not specifying of the thing that I need to couple my action to.
Okay,
my action is coupled to information.
About.
Okay.
For me, when I say specifying, I literally mean the performance context. I literally mean a grappling match. That's what I mean.
But the behaviors that we display...
We're training for grappling matches, correct?
Yeah, but that's what representativeness is. The more representative, the more of those behaviors are baked into the task.
We're training for a grappling match. The guy I don't know on Saturday, who I shake hands with at a specific way, at a specific time, and under a specific rule set, I have to fight them. That is specific. We are trying to get as specific as possible on a scale. We don't start with specificity because there are other things we have to consider when creating training interventions based on what the individual needs as it relates to changing their behavior. So we're in the business of changing behavior through training so that the change in behavior transfer to the performance environment. The actions we take in the training environment are relative to the demands of the performance environment. Do you agree with me there?
Yeah, so what you've described is specificity and a representative learning design. You're describing the thing, but with different terms. So specificity, again, I appreciate we have people listening, so just to make it really clear, specificity is the degree to which what I'm doing is coupled to an information source that is itself specifying. So the pool noodle, non-specifying, not specific. A person's fist that's traveling towards me, more specifying. A person's fist where they can do every single punch that is available to them in boxing, the most specifying. We are going up the scale of representativeness because the behaviors become more and more closely aligned to the behaviors that are actually possible. So as long as the task we are doing, regardless of how decontextualized it is and how simplified it is, as long as the thing we are coupling our action to is itself specifying, then there's perception action coupling happening. There's value being gained. When I'm going from one hip to the next hip, the information, I would argue, is decontextualized because this person's not defending in such a way that they're trying to stop me from pinning. If I can pin you, that creates the conditions that make me moving from one hip to the other an available affordance. If you're not defending a pass, the reason I would pass from one side to the other isn't present, and the behaviors you're displaying that would prevent me moving from one side to the other aren't there. Like, it's not specifying because it's decontextualized from the thing that we couple our action to, if that makes sense.
Either you don't understand jiu-jitsu and its demands, or you
Maybe.
are that's highly likely.
I suspect not, but
for you to make that statement is it truly, if jiu-jitsu people are watching this now, they will hear you say that, and they are going to all shake their heads.
Yeah, I suspect not, in all honesty.
Even a person who doesn't know CLA know what you just said is not true.
So
so when someone moves from one side of the body to the other, what the bottom player is doing ultimately is using the connections of their hands and feet to stop lateral motion.
Sure, but if I don't...
Go ahead, please.
I was just saying that the important thing isn't that I'm trying to stop lateral motion. Of course I'm trying to stop lateral motion. I'm trying to stop you from achieving a task goal you're looking to achieve. My behavior is compromised if I'm not attending to a pass. Outside camping exists as a thing because people don't want to be passed. Somebody will stand on the outside, they'll change the point of reference so that they can look to pass from the other side. If I'm not allowed to pin you and you are stood at my hip line, that action is completely decontextualized.
It isn't in any way, shape, or form. Because the pin is functional through the entire process of passing. So, for example, me standing in front of your legs and not letting you get off your back is pinning. It's the same pin as if I'm putting my chest on your chest. There's degrees of functionality from the start of the pass to the ultimate pin. Pinning is passing and passing is pinning. So it is not decontextualized.
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. I would
like to move on to the next one.
Wait. This is
super important. This is really, really important.
This is really important.
This is literally the kernel of what the problem is.
Right.
On the bottom. So just to make it about as concise as I possibly can. If you have got yourself to my hip line and I don't defend the pass, I'm not stopping you from
defending the pass. Because
I'm stopping you from going to my other hip. That's what I'm trying to do.
Every task game that I've ever designed is zero sum, meaning no matter how small we slice the game, the bottom player is taking actions that are both game relevant and in opposition to the other players. So keeping it contextually relevant. So I'm trying to stop you from accomplishing your goal while you try to do yours. This is something that must happen between the two players. So for example, if I am teaching a new student how to pass legs and they need to be exposed to lateral movement, left to right motion, I need them to engage in left to right motion. So if the game is designed to get to the hip, hold the line, get to the other side, get to the line, and if you do that 3 times, you win, this is literally exposing them to something that you must do in order to go around the legs.
100%.
The bottom player
I agree.
must prevent this from happening by making connections. And we give them a win condition. And let's say brand new, something simple, both feet to the middle, both ankles. This is the line where left to right motion stops. And that's why we keep it there. So we can expose them to the initial demands of passing legs to the outside relative to dealing with the connections that will oppose it. Now, again, this is not a singular game you will use for 6 weeks. This is an initial exposure to a demand of the performance environment. Do you understand?
For sure. I agree. The only thing that we don't agree on is that if you are at my hip line and I don't defend you coming chest to chest, I am not giving you the information that you would couple your pass from one side of my body to the other side of my body to.
Because there's no relationship. There's no relationship between chest-to-chest contact and moving to the other side. This is your misunderstanding of guard passing.
The threat of it. What we're doing is that type of task is essentially saying you can only punch me in the body. They defend like this, and you're learning to punch you're learning to punch bodies in these really constrained positions. Their behavior doesn't have functionality or action fidelity. That's the problem, is because you can only go from one hip to the other hip. I could just lie flat on my back, not defending the pass, and just worry about trying to stop you move from one leg to the other. My
Have you never
behavior
watched?
as the bottom player is compromised. I have to defend the pass. If I don't defend the pass, there's an easy way of solving it. It's just points, right? Every time you get from one hip to the other hip, it gets you a point. But if you get to the pin, it's worth 5. So the functionality is there. The player has to attend to a pass, but the behavior of maybe moving from one hip to the other hip would afford me other opportunities of passing guard is worth exploring then. But without having the thing that shapes their behavior, there's no perception action coupling. We're coupling to a thing that is non-specifying.
If this were the case, what you're arguing, I hope you hear this, then no action taken in a small-sided game is representative.
No, it is because the thing
No,
that we are doing is specifying. It is coupled to
no,
specified
because
behavior.
okay, freeze. So then that means in any slice of the game, a student would have to be exposed to submission opportunities, sweeping opportunities, back taking opportunities. This is literally impossible during the scaling process.
No, but
Yes,
as
because
long,
if the student doesn't have the capacity to entangle, then it can't be part of the game.
Greg, I love you. I don't mean to upset you. I'm just speaking my position. I can see you're going quite red.
No, no,
I'm more
truly
than
not
happy to
upset.
engage in a friendly
Look,
debate, but I don't want you saying I don't understand BJJ. And I'm okay. I'm okay with collegiate debate, but I don't want to fall out when we both agree with 99% of training.
I
I want
am
that clarified. Okay.
I am literally right now for you. I like you forever. You are the first person I've ever spoken to. Anytime that I needed help with understanding of literature, you were the first person that I've reached out to. So please do not mistake my passion for
Perfect.
anger.
As long
Listen,
as we're on the same page, we're
you
fine.
could come, you could call me tomorrow and be like, Greg, I'm switching to drilling. I would still call you. Like, what the fuck? Like,
So,
but
without
I'm just,
wanting to I promise you, I'm not criticizing you. I'm criticizing this as a thing. It's
brother,
the
you have to
difference.
please, there's nothing you could do to ruin my view of you in any way, shape, or form. I, my excitement and my passion is literally that's it. Listen,
Awesome.
I
As long as that's the case, right? I don't want to be upsetting you. As long as we're
no
on the
no oh
same
no no
page.
please like
Perfect.
when I get charged up when I'm excited and people
No, I know.
misinterpret this as being
I know
something else.
for sure.
I was born an American man. I'm sorry. I don't know. Our
We all
culture's
have our
fucked up.
crosses to carry. I know.
Um,
So
no,
essentially,
so
the reason it isn't is because in a decontextualized task, there is still specified information that we're coupling our action to. So we're playing get hands or hips to the floor, and my partner's trying to stand. That is an action that somebody would take. They would try and stand against these things. The kernel of information that I'm coupling my trying to topple you to is specifying of the environment. Moving from one hip to the other, the thing that is coupled to isn't what their legs are doing to try and move me around. It's coupled to the defensive posturing and structures they put in place to prevent a pass, and the pass informs whether changing my point of reference is important or not. Like, why would I move from one side of your body to the other? It's not
right.
arbitrary. That kind of task becomes arbitrary. I'm just moving from
This
here
is
to here to here to here to here to here. Usually, I'd
this is
say it is done as a way of changing our point of reference so that we can look to pass guards in a different way, right? If there's another reason that somebody would move from one side to the other, that the person on the bottom wouldn't attend to a pass, they'd just attend to try to stop you from arbitrarily moving from left to right, then maybe it's a great task. But I'm not aware of any instance where I'd give a shit that they've gone from my right to my left and they've not passed me. Like, I've got defenses here, I've got defenses here. This is fine, move around.
so again. Be very sensitive to what you're saying here. You're saying I don't know an instance where somebody would care. So again, if we couple the tasks of me preventing you from moving left to right by making meaningful connection being connections as the bottom player I need to use or need to obtain to advance my position, then it is 100% not decoupled. Let me give you an example why. As a new player, if entangling is something that I need to build capacity for and a coordination to, then inside position is something I need to attune to and coordinate to. So being able to get both of my feet in between your knees is a critical precursor skill to entanglement. So when we're initially building that attunement and coordination pattern, we have to do it against different levels of movement, right? In and out, left and right, okay? If I can't stop in and out, left and right movement as the bottom player and get my feet in between your knees, I will never have access to entanglements. So the actions a bottom player takes in the game of grappling don't always have to do with defending the pass, because it's not just guard passing that we're dealing with, because there are other aspects of the guard pass that need to be dealt with. So for example, when I get to your knee line, we don't always just slam into each other chest to chest. This is not the case. People have tried to draw lines on passing type in our sport, what they would call high passing, low passing, loose passing, tight passing. So each of these different structures as it relates to how somebody passes legs are informationally relevant and specific to each of those ways. So the only way that we attune a player to those possibilities is by slicing it up and affording the opportunity to experience it. But the experience isn't just stop the chest to chest contact.
No, no.
Because
for sure, I agree. You've said a bunch of stuff that I completely agree with. The difference is, if you were at my hip line, I would have to stop you from passing me. If you were stood there and I don't, you wouldn't just hang out
why
there, right?
do you think
Would you pin
I'm
me?
not stopping you from passing you by putting my legs back in front? Putting my legs back in front of you is stopping the pass.
No. So we're playing this going from one hip to the other hip game, right? If you are at
Do you know
this
why
hip,
we're doing it that way? Do you know what the intention of that practice is?
I'd love to know.
Is there something more important than intentionality when we're talking about how to inform decision making in a constraints-led approach environment?
No, I've presumed, I have assumed. One should
Perfect.
never assume. I would imagine it's so we can just develop the skill of moving laterally from one side of our opponent to the other, which is a skill. We have noticed the behavior, but we haven't coupled that behavior to the thing that informs that behavior. That's the thing. That behavior is an emergent behavior that only exists because I'm changing my point of reference. I'm moving from one side of your body to the other because I'm looking for a different angle of attack. Your defenses are well situated here. I can't gain access to my pass, so then I move from one side of you to the other. If you're not doing those conditions that mean I would move from one side to the other, I'm learning to pass a player that isn't behaving in the way that they would behave for me to have to actually pass, right? Move from one side to the other, I should say.
A bottom player trying to make contact with the top player to prevent left and right movement is directly coupled to chest availability. So if I can get exposed to the opportunity of preventing left to right motion, there is transfer between stopping left to right motion and preventing chest to chest contact. There is a relationship present there. By removing chest to chest contact as the win condition, what we are affording both players is an opportunity to utilize and experience the effect of left to right motion as it applies to creating paths past the guard. It is exactly what you are arguing for in a well-informed and applied training intervention. So without knowing the intention of the practice, it would literally be impossible for you to determine whether or not that was an effective intervention. It is representative. It is.
That's the problem, is we end up in a position that the person in the bottom's behavior isn't coupled. It lacks action, fidelity, and functionality. The functionality of that task is compromised because the way I solve the problem of you moving from side to side isn't coupled. It's not a thing that I would do because the way I solve that problem might just lead to you pinning me. You might just pin me. So
then you didn't solve the problem.
That is the problem. The problem from that task is don't let them go from left to right to left to right. I might solve that by completely and utterly abandoning any kind of near side knee shield, not framing with my hands, and just going, no, don't do it. So my solution...
Tell me, how would you solve that then? Please, tell me how you'd solve it in a decoupled manner. I would love to know.
Like that. So my behavior is
describe it, please.
So
I want everyone to hear you describe it.
This is how I would play the game to not be passed, to not have you go from one side to the other. I wouldn't attend to the pass in any way, shape, or form. So any behaviors, whatever solution I come up with, regardless of what that solution is, if I don't have to attend to you pinning me, my behavior isn't coupled to you. Your behavior isn't coupled to me. It is not perception action coupling. It's action. It's arbitrary movement.
It
The
is
fact that
not.
I'm trying to stop that movement. So like if we're playing a game where I'm going to try and stop you from combing my hair and we're going to have a bit of a grapple, and if you comb my hair, you win the game. Well, there might be some specifying stuff. I might be looking to control you, but it might not. That doesn't really happen in BJJ. The behaviors that I'm learning to prevent don't exist. I might be the world's best comb hair preventer, but it's not going to transfer. This is the important thing.
That's a straw man or a red herring. That's not even what I'm talking about.
It's an analogy. It's an analogy that
it isn't
frames
analogous at all.
Of course it is.
Because
it
left to
frames
right
that the behavior is
and
broken.
hair combing.
Yeah, it's showing that there is this break between what is specifying and what isn't specifying.
But there is
my
not.
behavior.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Always.
Seriously, just to answer this. Describe a process of guard passing where I don't have to get in between the knees or outside the knees once past the feet. Please.
I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm saying that the way you go about achieving that, I have to attend to you trying to pass me. If I don't,
you are attending to me trying to pass you.
I'm not stopping you from pinning me. I'm just stopping you from moving from one side of my body to the other side of my body. This behavior is broken, right?
It's not broken. I promise you. I know that you can't see this, and I like, and I know this, and I'm not saying this in an insulting way. I'm not challenging your understanding of the literature. The only thing I'm challenging in the literature is representative design, and I would disagree with any researcher or scientist on this topic.
So you disagree with the literature rather than you disagree with my understanding of the literature?
Well, in one aspect, yes. I disagree with representative design as being high or low. I believe that representative is representative, and it's either high or low in specificity. That's my argument. That's what I tried to help. That's what I tried to argue for. So that's my position. What I'm hearing now is I think the sticking point between what you consider representative and not is your understanding of the process of guard passing. I don't think, understand in a nuanced way the demands of guard passing. And I'm not saying that from ecological dynamics. I'm saying that from a grappling expert.
But if I said that to you, I presume you'd say, well, that's nonsense, right?
Well, no, I know. If you and I were talking about, let's say, Haraya Goshi, or the way we mix, let's say,
we do guard passing in judo. Ostensibly, I'm a brown belt in BJJ, so
it is not the same sport. It is the same physical level of engagement, but it is not the same sport.
We pass guards. I can throw you to the floor, get past the line of your feet, and pin you. That is a thing that happens in judo. And again, I am ostensibly a brown belt in BJJ as well. So,
again, that's an authoritative argument.
So, no, you're saying. Never mind. We'll move on.
Yeah, I played, Greg, your game, and I would like to the passing back and forth, the passing, because I bought your program. And what I noticed was that depending on whom I was doing it, because of course, depending on the level of the player I'm doing it with, like sometimes when I needed like 2 or 3 inside touches and later like the outside touches, sometimes I could have passed, but I had only then 2 touches. And so, but I will also say that it definitely, even though it felt to me sometimes a bit arbitrary, it definitely improved my passing by a lot, because the feedback I got, from camps said to me, Laurien, you should go a bit more back and forth. So I also bought in this. That's the listening to you both. I'm like, I see what you say, Cal. I also found it felt arbitrary to me, but it definitely made me better, because now I do go back and forth when I need to, when I feel the resistance. Before, I would just stick there and would still try to somehow push my way through.
Sure. So I am in no way saying that changing our point of attack is a bad thing. We should absolutely explore that as an affordance. It's that affordance is coupled to specifying information that my opponent displays. If my opponent isn't defending a pass, why would I change my point of attack? I move from one side to the other to gain new information to try and pass in a different way.
You are arguing in a hypothetical way for capacity and skill being equal. This is not what that game was designed for. This game was literally designed to expose new players to the opportunity to move around to the outside of the legs as a way to build both attunement to the process, coordination to the process, and capacity to perform those actions. We know that there is a direct link between an individual's capacity to perform an action and the affordances available to perform an action. The game is designed as a developmental tool to gain access to that skill. So it is 100% representative of demands that are asked for in the performance context. It is a small-sided game that is used to highlight those affordances.
It's not highlighting those affordances. Those affordances exist in context. It is the context and specified information that makes that affordance available. And we're not getting that perception action coupling. That's the problem. But again, I agree with everything you said, except it's not 100% representative, because the way I am going from one side to the other isn't coupled to a behavior that is representative. They aren't behaving with action fidelity. It's just, it's broken because of that.
No, because you're assuming that the reason I would switch sides is because of the bottom player not allowing chest-to-chest contact.
No, I'm saying that if they don't not allow chest-to-chest contact, the way that I pass will be different. They have to try and prevent me passing, because if they don't, I will pass them.
You are passing.
No, how am I?
That's what you don't understand.
I'm not getting chest-to-chest and pinning them.
That is not everything that's present within a guard pass. That is a small aspect of what completes the pass as it relates to the score that's demanded in the sport. The physical level of engagement is represented beautifully in the game. There's more than chest to chest. Again, that's what I mean. I can hear, like, in the field that I am well versed in, I can literally hear that you do not understand the process, and that is okay.
No. But again,
if I were to design a judo
this would just be ad hominem, to be fair. This isn't actually framing
I'm not
stuff.
attacking you.
No,
I'm going to attack myself. I'm going to attack myself. Listen.
No, but it doesn't matter. You're saying I don't have a level of expertise that I think I do. I've been involved in grappling for 31 years. I've coached Nogi BJJ for 12 years. Like, I've spent a long time doing this.
Sure.
I'm aware of what the demands of the sport are. If I have got past your feet, I'm at your knee line, and you don't prevent me passing to chest, would I take that chest-to-chest position? Or would I go, oh, God, no, I don't want to pin him?
It depends on what's happening, because decisions we make are relative to what's happening in the current context.
Sure, so guys are competing, you would watch them have an easy pass into side control, and you'd go, no, just stay by their hips.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Because this is something that might be required based, like, for example, we do ADCC, right? For the first 3 minutes, there's no score.
But so you don't want to try and win in the first 3 minutes. You don't want to. There's an easy pass into side control where I can start isolating limbs and beating them. You just
for sure. So, for example,
loiter and do nothing.
This is a strategic choice. So let's imagine that I'm fighting somebody who has very dexterous legs, and they're very difficult to get to the outside. And let's say I'm at the 2 minutes and 30-second mark, and my pass will not score me the points. So I need to be able to get to the outside and hold that line until the 3 minute points. And then I need to be able to hold that and then initiate my contact.
So I still want to get chest to chest.
But the point is if I wouldn't have been able to hold that line for an extended period of time, that chest to chest would have not been available when I needed it to be. Because the skill of passing is process oriented.
Sure.
There are a set of conditions that I need to be able to fulfill intentionally.
Yeah.
So we are not only training the mechanics of what's causing motion overall, we're also training the decision making within the process.
Yeah, but that's decoupled. This is the problem, right?
This is conditions that lead to the ultimate outcome.
Okay, so we're in an ADCC bout, and there's no score for the first 2 minutes. And I walk out and I lie down on the floor, flat on my back, with my legs on the floor and my arms like this, and say, "You can have side control if you want."
Yep.
You wouldn't take side control.
This has happened before.
So you don't take a free pin. I'm not saying as a trap. I'm not saying this is a trap and I'm going to engage in guard. Ha ha. I'm saying at the beginning we're going to shake hands on a legally binding contract that says we can start this ADCC bout either standing like this or you start in side control. You'd say, "Oh no, I'll start standing." Or do you start in side control?
Listen. If you watch ADCC matches and if you watch grappling, the assumptions you're making are not correlated with what we actually see.
But you're saying that a side control isn't better than standing facing each other in a symmetrical, we're both standing at the beginning.
It depends on your capacity and skill set.
The first very first second of an ADC is about, well, we're both equally matched, we're both equal weights. You don't think
Well,
taking a pin is
again,
a
that's an
good
assumption.
option.
That's a hypothetical that we're not even arguing hypotheticals.
This is how we can start to frame an argument. We offer forward a hypothetical so we can understand each other's frame of reference.
Okay,
As a
so for
hypothetical,
example,
is a side control pin better for me than standing facing you?
in a beginning of an ADCC match
Yep.
where no points are awarded,
None at all. No. So you wouldn't want to start about inside control. You'd rather start here.
It depends on my capacity. If I'm a 10th planet player who has these buggy choke tricks from side control, then absolutely. If I'm fighting a cagey player who's not willing to who not willing to come forward, and I know that I'm a better player, then yes, I might want him to start there. So these assumptions of betterment are related to capacity, skill set, and rule set. So
and physics, right? Physics is quite important. Me starting pinning you, able to isolate limbs, is probably a better position than us starting in an equal, we're both standing and facing each other.
physics is not a vacuum, right? So you just don't get under my elbows because it's powerful.
I thought that was a pun there. Physics isn't a vacuum. Never mind.
You get under my elbows relative to your capacity to do so and my capacity to resist. So if you don't know me and I don't know you, there's no way for you to accurately make that decision without engagement. So again, there's no hypothetical here based on physics because we've seen this.
Yeah,
when Gordon Ryan was a brown belt, he let some guy mount him and he heel hooked him immediately afterwards. So like,
yeah, but
it's not as simple as you're making it out to be.
Well, was that as a strategic choice, or was that because he knew he was infinitely better than the guy and could pretty much do what he wants with him?
Those are heavily considered when you asked your question. That's the point I was making.
Okay, cool. So what I'm saying is progressing from being side on to somebody, let's say I'm J-point camping, to a pin is a good thing. I want to go from
J-point camping is
whatever.
A pin.
It's okay
Is a
to a
pin.
chest to chest pin. That's
Chest to
probably a
chest
thing. Is there a hierarchy of starting by your feet is worse, starting in side control is better? Or do you think all of these things are arbitrary and progressing along any continuum towards getting closer to pin chest to chest is futile and pointless and worthless?
No.
So there is value of getting chest to chest. Perfect. So this is the point I'm making. If I am in a position that I could get chest to chest and your behavior doesn't prevent me from getting chest to chest, then me arbitrarily moving from one side to the other isn't coupled to a defensive action that has functionality.
Have you seen? So if I go left to right, do you know what else I have availability to other than pinning that is probably better than pinning? Do you know? What else would I have access to that I'm preparing
Those
my
things you
students
get
for?
into leg entanglements, you could do lots of things.
So then why would you not bring that up?
Because if I wanted them to do that, then I would have that built in as a target, so that we're looking to try and couple. So we're trying to so that we can we can couple that passing from one side to the other to a task goal. It is something that their defensive structure has to deny. If I am next to you and you don't defend me pinning you, then it is not a well-founded practice task according to the literature. It doesn't have functionality and it doesn't have action fidelity. It's not a good task in the literature. That's all I'm saying. Is
the literature in that capacity is either wrong or underdeveloped.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm more than happy to say that you have some sort of special understanding from being involved in this space for a while, that you think that it is worth foregoing a pin to stay side on. I think that if the action isn't coupled to a defensive reaction that our opponent would make, then it is an arbitrary movement. It isn't coupled. It lacks perception action coupling, which is the problem.
Left to right movement to pass the feet is not arbitrary.
No, the action itself is an action we take. It's like, I have noticed that people do these things, but I haven't put the reason they do these things in. The reason they do these things is how we couple our action to what we are perceiving. If they aren't behaving in a way that that action is a thing that they would do, then it lacks fidelity, right? The boxer putting his elbows on his belly when I say you can only punch the belly is this. We have broken the functionality of the behavior so that the way they have to succeed that task is against an opponent that isn't behaving with action fidelity. It is broken. But again,
I'm telling you, it's the way you're either viewing it or something else that is completely misinformed.
Maybe. I've spoken to quite a lot of people about this that are, world champions and have masses of medals in this space. I presume that their understanding of the sport is much better than me. I'm only 31 years of grappling. So it might well be the case that I haven't got a clue what is going on in the sport. But the people I've said, have you noticed that these are just sort of arbitrary movements? And they've gone, oh yeah, no, I wouldn't just arbitrarily move from one side to the other. It'd be as a response to a thing the defending player is doing.
No. So when we act out on in the grappling environment, the first thing we're acting out on is imposition. So I'm trying to impose whatever I'm trying to do on you relative to the game we play. You resist that and vice versa. As you resist, you impose on me. There's an exchange going on. All the games are designed to have this exchange at the seat of it. So if I'm introducing people to passing legs and I'm going to the outside, your task would be to try to keep your feet on me. So that is what the relationship we're exploring there. It's not the relationship between chest to chest and not chest to chest. It's feet in contact with versus feet not in contact with. This relationship makes up the beginning levels of guard passing. So when introducing people to this process, that is what they are fighting over. It is not arbitrary. We can't be confused by the left and right movement, because what you're confusing in that case is exploratory behavior for a developmental purpose versus specific behavior for exploitation of the performance environment. Those are two different demands. We don't build skill in the performance context in the way you're arguing for it. Instead, we build skill in a scaling fashion based on the demands of the current athlete we're working with. So it was designed for that purpose again, and it is a singular game. This, if you hear me argue
for sure.
over and over,
No,
over
absolutely.
again, singular interventions by themselves don't stand alone. It's
A
an
million
iterative
percent.
process.
No.
So, for example, this is the big beef of all. If we're going to use representative design, we have to be careful, because if we're talking to new coaches who are trying to keep things ecologically consistent and contextually relevant, representative design needs to be more clear. Coaches need to know where they can slice the game and where they can stop the engagement. If they don't have a clear line for where these things are, they're going to have a very difficult problem designing
Yeah, for sure.
practice.
This is
And
what I'm
that's what
talking
we
about.
see.
This
When
is
they
literally
see
what I'm
Cal
talking about.
Jones say something like, it's arbitrary, they need chest-to-chest contact, then they might not use this training intervention, because they might say, hey, coach, Cal Jones says this is not representative.
Yeah, I'll clarify, because it seems that you're still a little confused as to what I'm saying, or I've not been clear enough to elucidate my point with clarity. We're in a position, right, that the behavior has to go against specifying information. So the behavior of my opponent has to specify how I solve that problem.
Okay,
Just one sec. This is the fundamental understanding. This is the fundamental underpinning of perception action coupling. My action is coupled to what I am perceiving. If what I'm perceiving isn't representative of the performance environment, then it isn't perception action coupling. It's coupling to arbitrary action. This is the thing.
Do people use their feet on players and hands to stop left to right passing?
Yeah, 100%. No argument.
Is that present in the performance environment?
But it's broken, because the thing that they're coupling the action to isn't representative. If I'm not attending...
We're coupling the action. See, this is the thing. I don't understand why this is hard.
No, me. This is the exciting thing, right? It's that there is a non-specifying behavior.
But it's not non-specifying, because what we're... as a bottom player, I have to make connections to you.
Do you have to make connections to me that deny me passes? Or do you just take any connection and don't care about being pinned?
I have... When you're, when you're guarded, you are pinned, correct? Do you know that? Okay. You're pinned already.
Sure.
So whether I put my chest on your chest, you are literally pinned to that floor.
Why pass guard then?
Because the sport demands it.
Do I have a better chance of submitting you?
If we're in MMA, I would go into your closed guard and beat your face to death.
Because
you're already pinned. So
the nomenclature I'm using is a pin is not caught in guard or half guard. We have passed the line of our opponent's legs and we are pinning them to the floor. So if a referee were to look in and score points for me pinning, that's a pin. That's what I mean by my nomenclature of pinning.
This is the problem that we have. A pin. Pin is defined in the scoring sporting context is not directly related to the function of pinning.
Sure, but getting to those positions increases my capacity for finishing.
So it's critical to understand the function of pinning so that we can design practices around affordances for pinability.
Sure.
So chest to chest is a specific way that we can pin a body to the ground. Lifting the heels off the mat is a way that we can pin a body to the ground. There are functional degrees between things we can do in front of legs versus things we can do past legs. So it's representative because we are performing the function of pinning within the process of the game that we have designed. We stop left to right movement not just to stop chest to chest, but we perform that action to stop hand and foot connection. So it is directly coupled to the information source in a high action fidelity manner based on what we would need to do to even make chest to chest contact available.
But we want chest to chest contact. That is a thing but we want chest to chest contact. So my opponent, I am signed on to my opponent. They are not defending chest to chest contact. I would take chest to chest contact. I want to be able to
get my athletes to go from standing in front of legs to passing legs to creating chest to chest or chest to back contact.
Perfect. So this is fundamental.
There is no direct relationship between left and right motion and chest to chest contact. That is the mistake you are making, and that's the only thing I'm pointing out as a grappler.
Absolutely, for sure. So
there is no relationship there.
So if you're saying that you don't move from left to right because you're looking at a different frame of reference because your opponent is defending a pass, that's fine. Like, it could be moving for other reasons. For me, the reason that I have seen people pass from one side of a guard to another is to change their point of attack because their opponent is defending well to that side. They've got really good connections, they're framing well. You might take a long back step and start to explore passing to the side where all their weapons are facing the other direction. My moving from side to side is coupled to your defensive action. If your defensive action isn't present, there's no action.
The defensive action is present. But me maintaining connection to you with my hands and feet are frames.
Sure, so you can stop me from pinning you. Oh, sorry, right. I'll rephrase. You can stop me from getting into chest-to-chest contact with you. Cool, that's fine. As long as you are able to prevent that behavior, then we are fine. It is coupled. If that behavior isn't there, then it isn't. There's no action fidelity and it's arbitrary.
Direct relationship between me being able to keep hand and foot contact with you and preventing chest-to-chest contact. We do not have to be directly exposed to it initially to start developing that skill. Again, do you know, here are two big strong points. So one, donor actions. There are some actions that look different that enhance another. Donor actions are real. This would be an example of one. The relationship with being able to functionally use your hands and feet to keep someone at a relative distance is directly connected to preventing chest-to-chest contact. Whether it is present in the current situation or not, it is represented here. Therefore, it is represented. So again, that's my argument for that. And the second thing is Rob Gray's research on hitting, where you had people hit up in the air, down low, at the ground, blah, blah, blah. Based on your argument, that's not representative.
However, it's low and representative, but it has high specificity, for sure. We're coupled to specifying information. There is perception action coupling happening that is task specific.
That is literally identical to what the game we were talking about here.
No, that's why I'm saying it isn't, is because the specified information that we're coupling to isn't it's self-specifying. It needs to have the threat of a pass for them to behave in such a way that they are defending so that I would have to pass from one side to the other.
Cal, it is the threat of the pass. Me going feet, knees, hips is a precursor.
Sure, but
to passing.
So you are here, and I am not stopping you from getting chest to chest. I do this, and I'm just up here stopping you getting around my legs. This is fine for you. You think that's a relevant task?
You must be able to do that to prevent chest to chest contact.
But the way I'm doing it does not prevent chest to chest contact. Watching the group play this task, I can go, well, I'm just going to say if they get chest to chest, they win. And lo and behold, loads of people getting chest to chest because they're not, the solution they are stumbling on doesn't have action fidelity because it's not coupled to functional behavior.
No, this is not true because the demand.
It might be one of those that we could just agree to disagree because it's been like 40 minutes. It's going a bit Mike Israetel.
Cal, please. Cal, I'm going to.
Absolutely.
Because here we go here in circles. I hear both. And I think for the listeners, it's about that they can think about and decide what they want to play. That's in the end the D4. So I would actually like to continue to another, like something that I often hear and people ask me also is, but if I do COA, can I still show something, or is that bad? Greg, what is your take on that?
I think showing is a great way to inform what's possible. Showing draws attention to things that people have never seen or experienced before, which can enhance their search for new possibilities. I think the way we model behavior is critical, and we have to be careful on how we do it. We have to understand the actor as an entire human, not just a passive observer. So, one of the dynamics that we struggle with in coaching is authority. When people assign possibility to authority, sometimes they won't search their own space because they feel like the authority is more important than their own search. So anytime I show something as a model of behavior, I make sure I show it in such a way that is results-based, not specific process-based. I do this to try to help people be confident in taking action based on their own experiences, not necessarily what the coach has told them to do.
Yeah, that, basically. The literature is really overwhelming that demonstrations and instruction are fine. They're just informational constraints. How we use those informational constraints is really important. So there's a distinction that's made in the literature that can be kind of boiled down to, don't show them what to do with their body, show them what their body is trying to do, which is a really easy way of doing it, right? I don't want to do hokey-cokey coaching. You put your left hand here, your right hand there. That kind of thing's pretty redundant, and it starts to enforce mimicry on people. They don't go through a search space to find a relevant solution. They just try and do what you did. But if you can frame what the problems are with a certain position, point out what you're trying to achieve by some certain task goal, and say, some people achieve this by doing this, some people achieve this by doing this. This is fine. Like, if I can stop you from getting an underhook with telekinesis, then I'm going to use it. It's fine. There's no magical, this is the way. It's that there's massive probability densities of areas in which people move to achieve certain things. That being said, there are some things that are not especially intuitive that just telling them is fine as well. Like, as an example, the rear naked choke, just squeezing like they're a watermelon that you're trying to pop. This is fine, but mimicking a collar strangle action with the other hand so we have more force, we have a force multiplier, is a really useful thing to be aware of. If you've never stumbled across that, there's no problem in saying, hey, there's this cool thing in physics where we can multiply force with the use of a lever. Looks a bit like this. Play about with that. It's fine, not a problem. As long as we're not restricting their search space in towards an idealized model, or by showing them a way that is, you do it like this, restricts their search space that they're just mimicking, then yeah, show them stuff, it's fine.
Then what I was thinking of, since we're also talking about competition, how do you, especially on the competition area, how do you warm up your players? Because often they do kind of drills to warm up. Do you guys do something else?
So what I really like to define warm up when we talk about this. So the way I like to think of warm up is just state of arousal. You have to be ready to practice. Now, your body does not care about how you do it. Jump rope, run in circles, shake violently, scream into the air until your blood pressure rises, doesn't really matter. But what we do want to consider is the psychological component of that. How does someone like to warm up? So anytime that we have an initial task in our environment, so we create a game, create a situation, we make sure that it's not so chaotic, so people have the opportunity just to move around and explore the space, up and down, left and right, hands, feet, whatever. So there's lots of motion, lots of breathing, lots of stuff going on that's not overly strenuous to initiate that beginning level of arousal to get started. Now, in a competitive setting, we treat things very differently. So in a competitive setting, we warm up hard. So like we want to get that state of arousal like hit suddenly. And anyone who's competed knows that very first match is hell on earth. It's the worst thing you've ever done. So we want to try to get that out right away. So again, we do like 6-minute match, 2 training partners will go in the corner and they'll just go hard. And they'll be, and then we have them take a break. Keep their sweatshirt on, move around, listen to music, whatever. Keep that state of arousal high. But yeah, this is what we consider when we warm up.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. One of the mistakes people make prior to competition is that they still regard it the same way that they would regard warming up for training. And training, it doesn't matter if I'm crap for the first couple of practice tasks, right?
Of
I'm
course,
top
we can
notch
always resume for an
warming my
episode
way
too.
into it.
Thanks, Cal.
So having stuff where there is perception action coupling and you're going through a search for relevant information and you're coupling actions to that information is super, super crucial. It's a universal experience, isn't it? Being underprepared for that first bout and going in and having an adrenaline dump and just being shit. Not ideal.
One of the mysterious things I've experienced, I have athletes who deal very well with nervous energy. Oftentimes I don't have them warm up, but that's very specific. Like there's athletes who after they warm up, they'll fall flat. And I don't know why that is. But like again, I have a young lady who her nervous energy is incredible. Like all she has to do is like jump up and down a little bit and she can go right out there. And her performance under stress is like crazy. It's like it does something, it like sparks her. But other people, sometimes it buries them.
Yeah,
They
for
get
sure.
dizzy, the room becomes bright, and they're like, oh my God. So I think really understanding what creates that state of arousal in your athlete and what affects them is more important than the process itself, because I think each person is going to have a different way they handle that initial burst of stress. And so it's critical in understanding your athletes and how they respond to that.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a guy I used to compete with when I was like 10 who used to sleep before his bouts. He'd be asleep, they'd call his name, you'd have to nudge him, and he'd go, me? He'd get up, put his belt on, go out, did well, won medals, good fighter, and then he'd come off and go back to sleep. It was ridiculous. Like, I'm there shaking and looking around, that guy looks big, and he's just napping. Crazy.
Love that. Yeah, we had once also, normally we would warm up, but once we went with the kids and the adults to a tournament, and somehow usually you have kids first and then like adults usually, but they had everything at the same time. So at one point I had to do gi and no gi on different mats that I had to run to. One's like, please wait, I have a mat right now. But because I had no time for warming up, no nothing, I did really well. That I didn't understand why. I had also the worst sore muscles the day after, I will say. But indeed, because after the match was over, I had to immediately, someone said, Laurien, your other students are mat free. So I had to run to mat free. And then after I had to compete again. But somehow I indeed did very well. So I should really kind of consider it, because I still had this belief until I listened to you guys that I need to warm up hard, do it well. But maybe the nervousness is also something for me that I just should jump in. I don't know. I'm going to think about that. Thank you. This is very, very helpful. Because again, usually just also what you say, Greg, just train the person in front of you, learn what they need, and indeed amplify that. Then I have one other
I
question.
have a I
Sorry,
have a
go.
bias towards coaching being specific. I think that one of the hardest things about being a coach in a generalized environment is that to me is an artificial demand on our ability as a coach. So having to speak to a room of 40 people as a single coach, I don't think maximizes the coach-student relationship. I think to maximize the coach-student relationship as a point of utility, it's very specific to the individual and to how the coach and he and her interact. And so I always keep that in the back of my mind, because again, I have to teach 40 students in a single class, but I know that it's the one-on-one interaction of me understanding my student as a whole person, as a whole human, that's really going to help optimize my ability as a coach in choosing interventions to help them deal with one problem or another.
I love that very much. That's also what we teach in the Thrive Drive method for trauma from coaching, is really precisely that. So I love hearing this because it's just so important. And indeed, even some people ask me also, yeah, but I have 40 people. How? I'm like, yeah, but over time, you get to learn, you get to know them. You also have the way how they can come in. You can kind of also sense the vibe when they have a good day, just a regular day, or a very bad day. You can see it. And as a coach, I also then try to already kind of manage that in the room so that everybody still gets really great training that's really like good for them. So I really love hearing that, because I think
Yeah.
we need more of that.
Yeah, coaching's not just skill acquisition, right? It's
Yeah.
we have what we do and we also have how we do it. So it's important that we actually attend to SDT and AGT and MML and all these other things. They're important to be aware of. So the annoying thing is a lot of it boils down to just try not to be a knobhead to people. Be understanding and receptive and push them when they need pushing, be supportive. Don't be this top-down autocratic ogre that is making people terrified to turn up. And things work out, which is awkward if you are a bit of an ass.
No,
Could I ask Greg a question?
Yes, love question.
Yeah, I was just interested because obviously you had your CGI thing. I was interested to see how you thought about coach instruction from the side. So for me, whenever I've been like coaching people, the stakes are really low. Like it's not the Olympics, and most of what I do is communicating for the refs what's happening, so they can see. Oh, you can see that he has established control for 3 seconds. Well done. Or look, he is showing progress. Don't stand him up, please. There's very little of me actually telling the athlete who is there what to do. Sometimes I'll offer offer insight that comes from a third person perspective. So they're in there and being crushed. They can't see stuff. So I might have something that might be relevant information that they can use in their own way. Just wondering how you viewed it.
Sure. Based on what I've read and based on my own experience, it seems like direct, externally focused instruction on what to be doing, not how to do it, but what to be doing, seems to show an increase in momentary performance. It says this in the literature, but also I know this to be true through anecdotal personal experience. So the way that I coach in a performance setting is very different than the way I coach in a training setting. So the one similarity between those two things is the language I use in training is typically the same language I use in performance. So that way there's not lag between what I'm saying and what I assume my student to be hearing. So let's say, for example, we design a bunch of games in training around getting access to the hips. Like in our school, this means close connections around the hips, whether it be entangled with the legs or let's say with the arms, right? So, and we go out to a competition and my guys are performing and I see the possibility for hip access. I'll say hip access just to kind of point their attention at what they've done and as it relates to what they are currently doing. So I try to keep that relationship very strongly connected. But again, I typically wouldn't do that in training as far as like standing behind somebody and like kind of using them like a controller, trying to move them around, because I think that also creates a reliance on coach information, like listening for what the coach telling me to do. But we do train it a bit so we can use it in the performance context because it seems to help, like especially under high urgency, under high stress, under high stakes. Um, keep your elbows down. Don't let them on your elbows. And they know that's all they have to do. This enhances their ability to do it, I think.
Yeah, nice. So you're essentially using it as a way of framing their search space. This is a thing that you want to probably try and accomplish. You do with that
No,
what
not
you will.
listen. I'm not a probably maybe options guy. Like when I'm coaching for performance, do this because I mean there are things that we can say that we know to be true. So let's say like you saw Taylor Pearman who got his guard passed by Dorian Oliveras, and he needed to survive to take both of them out. So that needed to be taken into consideration. So every time that Dorian got under Pearman's elbows and his back started to show, elbows down, put your back on the mat, put your back on the mat. Because I know that Dorian cannot submit Taylor unless he got under an elbow or he got chest to back contact. And because of what we needed to happen, that's what you need to be doing right now, because that's what he needs to be doing to win. So my direction and his experience, I tried to keep them coupled to what needed to happen based on what was happening. So no options. Get this done so we can get the hell out of here and not lose this match. You know what I mean?
Do you then also sometimes say what the opponent is doing to add
No,
information, or only talk to the person only?
I want them focused on the results of their actions. So what the opponent is doing is felt. So you've grappled before. You can feel what they're doing to you, right? That's already very apparent. So I think it's a mistake to say, watch out for the triangle, because what does that mean? What are the precursor conditions and states that lead to that possibility? Focus on that first. So for example, let's imagine I know a guy's very good at triangling and my student's facing him, right? And they're in the closed guard. And I notice the bottom guy keeps causing posting, right? And I know there's a relationship between the posted hand and arm separation, then we would highlight that as a possibility. Keep your hands off the mat. Keep your hands off the mat. Because it's the hands on the mat that could potentially lead to the head and arm situation. Saying watch out for the triangle, that's very nebulous. What does that even mean? Do I sit here and look at them? Should I take action? Should I hold still? If I'm watching out for it, I might not want to move because I don't know where it's coming from. I think it can poorly frame action potential if we use language in an ineffective way.
Would you do the inverse? Would you say he's posting? So
Yes. So now this is,
Yeah.
yeah. So I would, but I don't think is that effective. Actually, I had a thing this weekend. One of my athletes has been developing his wrestling quite a bit. He smoked his first guy, looked beautiful. The second guy he fought was a #1 seed, and the guy was a very good wrestler. Took my guy down 3 times, I think, in the exchange. My guy only took him down once, and there was a timing. I could see it. My student would clear the tie, and the shot was there, but he didn't see it. And so I tried. Every time he hit, I'm like, there, it's there. But he still couldn't see it. So again, to me, we didn't do enough of taking opportunity and training for him to see what I saw. So even though I tried to make him aware, it just wasn't strong enough condition to get him to act on it based on the demands of the current situation or the urgency and stress that he was feeling. So I think that it's not that it's bad or good. I think that it's really contextually dependent, based on the current capacity of the student, the urgency, and the environment they're currently in.
Yeah, for sure. You could point out information, but whether they have the capacity to act on the information is a very different thing, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that largely that's all we're ever doing. Like the more like I said, I have one of the reasons why I have these strong opinions around representative design actually has less to do with ecological dynamics and more to do with complex systems theory in general. So the more that I read the tertiary text around complexity and our inability to analyze complex engagements, I realize that representative design is not the whole answer for what's happening. I feel like it's the strongest answer we have now for keeping things contextually relevant and ecologically consistent, but I don't think it tells the whole story. And so I think it's just the best tool we have to make sure that we're at least having information, act fidelity, constrained to afford, and emotional salience. But beyond that, I think that that's really it. So again, there are other things at play that I think contribute to skill acquisition that might be more hard to analyze and put into a box.
Yeah. Yeah,
For
it's a
sure.
complicated old field, right?
Yeah, like honestly, like I haven't read any. I've stopped reading. Like after I read With Hagen a little, I was reading With Hagen quite seriously, and then he really kind of opened my mind to a bunch of questions that were not answered in the field yet. And so what I decided to do instead is go towards a like a more developed, generalized field of questioning, and I feel like that helped me quite a bit understand or at least deal with some of the inconsistencies that were arising from the human movement system. And I don't mean that as like, I mean like Cal on a Tuesday after eating 6 burritos the night before. How does that affect his practice, right?
Not well.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's the interesting thing I think is the position we are in as people that have rejected what is the dominant hegemonic position of skill acquisition, the brain as a supercomputer that does higher order mathematics, is we have shown ourselves willing to move away from a theory that we once may have believed to be the case. So I'm hoping that it's the case that in 10 years the science will have moved on. And I'm hoping that there's not a sunk cost thing where I'm going, oh, but I've spent all this time talking about ecological dynamics. Like tomorrow, if a paper came out showing me that there was this new thing and that information isn't itself specifying and it was compelling, I hope I'm in like intellectually honest enough to go, got it wrong. Uh-oh.
So
Like,
my new point of struggling with exact thing is so like I realize that if we hang on to the literature as if it's dogma, we're making the same mistake that we're urging people not to. So instead, what I do with literature, just like any other coach, is I take it as a guide. And we realize that in the literature, they're really trying to frame things as clearly as possible, but they're definitely, of course, missing things, right? And so I think it's the framing that's more important than the specific thing that they're saying sometimes, because I think the specific things aren't necessarily correct, like our disagreement today on what exactly is represented in a practice and, how does abstract value affect attention? These are things that are, I think, outside the scope, or at least in what the literature is affording, right? So how do we talk about the umwelt of a person, right? And how value affects that. So if I have a culture of always going towards, like, let's say the strongest outcome, like a 5-point throw, and a value system, it might draw me completely. But if I'm a kind of guy that likes to take whatever path towards victory I can, it might have no effect on me at all. So I
yeah, for
think
sure.
really understanding that context is deeper than intervention, I think this is critical. And as someone who's been applying this for, as you know, for a long time, like application teaches us a lot that theory often can't.
Yeah, what theory is useful for is showing us the trends. So certain types of practice we know have a higher degree of efficacy. We've done retention and transfer tests. We know that this has better outcomes than this. What the argument is what the mechanism is that means that it's the case. And we could debate that because it's fun, but we can't really argue that like a more representative task has a higher transfer and retention. That's just a really well-founded thing in the literature. We can argue about whether it's specified or representative. I think the literature is going one way. But as I say, the important thing for it to be constraints-led approach, for it to actually be the thing that we are saying we're doing, is that there is a salient piece of information that we couple our action to. If that information that we couple our action to is not representative, is not specifying, then it's probably not a good task. We can decontextualize and we can simplify and we can do all of these things, and there's still value in those tasks as long as we start calibrating and adding more representativeness in. So at the end, like a great example would be, we're looking at outside passing. Why not? We've been talking about it. I don't just appear next to your feet and outside pass. It doesn't work like that. My outside passing is completely contingent on the action that preceded it. I will try and get past your legs a different way if I have ankle picked you than if I have single legged you, than if you've, whisper it, guard pulled. If any of these things have happened, you won't get into Valhalla, but you do you. If any of these things have happened, the way we engage with the type of task we are engaging into is completely different. So that is a thing that people really don't attend to very often. That is itself specifying of how the action goes. There are these emergent and decaying affordances that exist for 2 heartbeats. Like the amount of times I've seen people, Polaris was bad for this. Someone would do a gorgeous takedown. They'd do this massive throw. Their opponent would land with their feet away from them. They're right by their head, and they don't pin. Like pinning's good. Sorry, they haven't gone chest to chest. They've not engaged into, I'm holding you there. Now I can start to isolate your limbs and twist them and make you go, ow. And I'd put my house on the fact that they're not doing throw to pin, throw to transition.
Well, that's really interesting. Actually, I know you probably don't want, I could literally talk for hours with no, I don't get tired. So please just, you're going to have to stop me because
I've only got 10 minutes left, I'm afraid.
Oh my God.
We can do it
Why,
again.
Cal?
I'm always happy to talk.
Come on, man. We don't get to do this.
I know, I have children.
I feel like you're making me leave the restaurant early when we're having such good fun. No, but you know, and like,
we can always have a
excuse me?
second one. I
Yeah.
do have one question that I find very interesting, especially because Cal is like still there, and for you as well, is that people I talk to often, so I'm doing this first COA ladies only camp in November, and I had a questionnaire and I asked them, where do you feel where you're strong, where are you struggling? And many are like, stand up, because they're afraid for their knees, they don't really know where to start. So what would be your tips, both of you, to create a stand-up practice design where you keep your knees? Because that seems to be often the main fear.
Since stand-up is not my area of expertise and it is Cal's, I'll go first because he'll probably have a better answer than I do. So
I don't think I have an area of expertise, but we'll go with it.
What I try to focus on first are rate limiters or limiting factors. So one of the strongest rate limiters to experiencing falling is falling. So exposing students to falling in a way where the risk factors are removed, I think is the first way that we start. So I think that one way we inoculate ourselves to extreme novelty and potentially injury is through exposure, right? So if something makes you flinch or scares you, you're more likely to act in a way which is uncontrollable, versus if you have an expected engagement, you may be less likely to act in a surprise fashion. So we typically start with people just hopping around on one leg. So we'll start people in single legs often, and we'll start at the end of the ankle, and their job will be to move somebody around. So they have to really feel that hopping around on one leg. And then we always start with falling towards the hands, because this is very natural for people to do. You see babies do it. They prefer to fall forward because it feels more safe than suddenly falling backwards. So we would do a situation where hold the ankle. We're going to use foot to foot contact. So when I always highlight this, foot to foot, not foot to knee, not leg to knee, foot to put someone on their hands. And this is where we can have them hop around, which feels very scary and insecure at first. The foot-to-foot contact helps protect the knee because we're not aiming at the knee as a target, which can help. And then we're having them fall towards the hands, which feels comfortable for people because that base of support is long and it's very available. And so we'd start somewhere like that. And then we would just increase the risk factors or the fear factors as we move along and as exposure increases.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty much that. We're in a position that there's the thing that causes risk is people bricking it when they're being thrown. When you're afraid of landing, you do weird things to try and protect yourself. So we just start with things that gradually increase the amount of contact. We might play a pickup game where you're trying to lift people in such a way that you could throw them. Then we might take them over after we have lifted them, but compliantly. They're resisting the lift, but they don't resist the takeover. So they're just becoming acclimatized to the floor. So we just scale up that degree of representativeness until at the end you're chucking them about and they land, but because they've moved their body through space in that way multiple times, they're aware of how to land. But it's a really weird thing. Like when I'm talking to judo guys, they're like, how do these BJJ guys do like arm locks with 10-year-olds? Like, because it's the sport. Like it's not dangerous. It's fine. It's the same when I talk to BJJ guys. They're like, how do they do like throws without hurting each other? That's the sport. Like we have wrestling, we have Greco-Roman, we have judo, we have all these things where you throw them on the floor. Like just another thing. So I think BJJ people are overly cautious of it and they're like terrified, but it'll probably just be because they haven't had a gradual introduction to landing on the floor. If you go straight into, and today we're doing high outside single hand wheels, maybe, not a great start. But if we're going from a little single leg where you get tipped over, and then we start going into maybe a double leg where I'm going to lift you and power through, and then we just bit by bit put a bit more impact in, eventually just move through space and land. Like it's fine. I promise you, they'll be fine. Yeah. So just to clarify, like I've coached judo for too long. I started when I was 16 as a first coach rather than assisting. I'm 36 now, so 20 years. We've had one bad knee injury, and that just came from somebody landing on somebody else's knee. The space was shallow and somebody landed on them. In 20 years, there's been one blown out knee, which, it's not a bad record, I don't think. So you'll be fine.
What about sacrifice throws?
We don't allow them at our gym at all. So because we don't think that the juice is worth the squeeze for our sport, right? A lot of our sport is centered around guard pulling in its performance context. So even though we don't center our training around it, we do consider it as the possibility we're going to face most of the time. So we don't think that the juice is worth the squeeze. So we have a rule: if you connect your hands around a body, you can't fall to make them fall. So your hips cannot hit first. They must hit first. And so this helps quite a bit. And so we do not allow, we don't allow anything jumping. We don't allow flying attacks, and we do not allow sacrifice throws of any kind.
All right.
Crikey.
Yeah.
Have you felt that in competition that has played against you guys at all? Have you had people level changing on them and they've not been well attuned to that as an affordance?
Not at all, because what you realize is that we really play a game of imposition. And so we have a culture of imposing our will on our partners. Now, the way that we inoculate our students to novelty is through condition and effect. If I produce a condition that nullifies the effect of you jumping, I never have to worry about you jumping. So a lot of our hand fighting tactics are centered around creating imbalances in the structure where jumping is no longer afforded or flying attacks are no longer afforded. So for example, we do not engage in 50-50 tying up ever. So we train our students so if in any even situation, we make it uneven as quickly as possible. We also don't hang out in connection as well. So if I don't hang out with the underhook, I don't hang out with a collar tie, we don't hang out. If you do, the conditions are rife for flying and jumping engagements. So again, we just train our students for the novelty by avoiding novelty through condition and effect.
You never lose that initial engagement and have to come into contact with. So as an example, the judo name for it is kami-basami, the thing where you jump up and
crab scissors.
So the degree of risk for that is ridiculously
massive.
High. Yeah, I think it's legal in some BJJ contests.
It's legal in almost all of our tournaments. It's scary as hell.
Yeah. That, I probably don't want people going into a competition where people have the opportunity of doing that without them having experienced it. So I might want to gradually introduce that as a thing under ridiculously controlled conditions, so that they know how to deal with it if somebody comes in there. Because I can't assume I'm always going to win every gripping engagement.
So I
Yeah.
think that's the honestly, I think that well, there's two things I think. One, that's the safe. We have to choose the safest measure. So I think even low levels of exposure relax the person to the point where I don't want them to be relaxed. And I don't think that we can take falling body weight in any capacity and make it controlled. So even though we form the training environment around maybe a safe Kani Basami where the surprise isn't there when the dynamics aren't there, the surprise and dynamics will always be there in a competitive setting. So again, I don't think we can bridge that gap very well through exposure. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. Please, guys, don't get me wrong. I do not think the juice is worth the squeeze in any way, shape, or form. Now, if you watch my fighters, all of my high level guys fight, people know this. They're like, we cannot win the initial gripping battle. Like, we train it so specifically and so heavily in everything that we do. We're like, yo, we are grip fighting masters. You are not beating us to our transitions. And it's a cultural point that we try to hammer home with all of our training. So it's very rare you see a standard athlete get out gripped. This doesn't mean you'll see them get countered or anything, because this does happen, of course. But winning the initial gripping engagement is going to be very difficult against one of my athletes.
Yeah, for sure. It's a priority at our club as well. We basically stole all the work that Jimmy Pedro Sr. did. So there's a whole bunch of really nice gripping stuff that is really important to be aware of. Being 2-on-1, having inside space if you're opposite sided, loads of these
Dude,
sort
that's
of general trends are really valuable.
it's so funny hearing you say that, because when I was doing jiu-jitsu coming up with the Guion, Roddy Ferguson was a Lloyd Irvin student, and Roddy Ferguson worked heavily with Jimmy Pedro. So a lot of the grip fighting tactics that we were exposed to were based on exactly what you just said. So hearing you say it is kind of hilarious, because we were trained to grip fight like that when we were coming up with the Guion.
Yeah, for sure. It's it just is so intuitive, and it it ends up in this position that you beat better players because their Kumikat, their grip stuff is appalling. So they've got an amazing game. I know if I let them get to good connections, they're probably going to beat me. But they're so bad at gripping. They don't understand the fundamental underpinnings of why you want to place hands in certain. Like they'll reach out with their sleeve hand unopposed. I'm like, thank you, and I'll just throw them on the floor. So yeah, it's super important. I agree, but in terms of sacrifice throws, yeah, like it's like a third of all the attacks in judo. We kind of need to be aware of them. In a gi, I think it was way more important. No gi, we still do them. So like Kimura trap rolls, we'll do Tane Toshis, we'll do Yoko Toshis, we'll do Kakuryumas, stuff where we're level changing. And again, we've had one bad injury in 20 years, so it's not too high of a risk. Something like a Tane Toshi is probably the most dangerous. The one where you step and put your leg behind. Yeah. If you put your knee down over their leg, there's a very, very high degree of risk. But it's just a case of gradually introducing people to those positions so that they can start to explore the space more safely. Yeah, that'd been an issue.
I don't know if this helps. Maybe you could. So we've done a lot of blocking and lifting, blocking and splitting. So like, let's say, for example, I want to step behind to destabilize backwards. We have to block and lift. So that way the foot comes off the ground as they fall. So we're not falling in the action. So rather than have the traditional Tanya Toshi where we block and fall, we block, but we don't fall. We block and lift, block and twist, split and twist. These are tasks we use so we can get exposed to the different lines of destabilization, because there's nothing demanding of falling first. Like that's just a thing that happened historically. But the question is it necessary to produce an effective backwards destabilization in this certain alignment? And of course, my answer is no. The whole thing is about changing the demand based on the intention of the movement. One thing that's heavily, as you know, heavily talked about judo is amplitude. And so if we don't care about amplitude and we only care about outcome, then maybe the demand of doing a falling body weight or a hard motion means nothing, because we can get the fall to happen without it.
Yeah, it's more that falling can initiate. So I can use my body weight dropping to be connected to. Same way if I'm ankle picking, if I've got a really strong collar tie and I bloop, you come with me, right? We are connected. There's 100 kilograms dropping to the floor while I'm in connection. You're going to come with me. That's a really useful way of moving people. So sacrifice throws essentially rely on that as a thing that initiates action. So if I'm rotating you over my leg, it puts me in a position that I'm susceptible to counter throws. You might be able to put your mat at me, you might be able to do stuff. There's a degree of risk. There is with everything, right? There's no silver bullet, otherwise people would only do that. But I think that the level change does add something. It adds this sinking. Using it, I might say that as a high calorie athlete, I enjoy being able to just drag people around. But like your lightweights doing stuff like Tomonagi, dropping underneath their opponent, it's basically say it quietly, it's basically a guard pull into a sweep straight away. There's a bunch of attacks that are this, but because we're dropping with connections, it is a sacrifice throw. I am sacrificing my weight, and I suspect you probably do that, right? You're probably level changing into a guard and looking to sweep off it, rather than like sacrificing around a knee. Or I imagine you don't think there's a high degree of risk of guard pulling with connections to bring your head with me, right?
It depends on the leg alignment.
Yeah.
It's how our legs are aligned. Like humans do very well with forward and backwards destabilization as long as there's no lateral angle. It's a lateral angle that's scary.
Cool. So you don't want sacrifices that go laterally.
Laterally, yeah. And so rather than split the hairs, because it's not a big component of our sport, we don't, the juices weren't the squeeze for us. But I understand in a judo setting where I think it's absolutely something you might have to expose yourself to as a possibility.
Yeah. Well, and in, I think, in all honesty, I think in BJJ it's probably worth exposing people to it. I would.
Have you watched? Do you know what the single greatest injury in all of gi jiu-jitsu is? Exactly what you're wanting us to get exposed to.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I've seen 12 knee ruptures in person in front of my eyes. In competitive 12. That's crazy. Tanya Toshi.
Yeah.
Alone.
I'm not surprised. There's a degree of risk there, but as you said before, it's that inoculation, right? We're getting them into a position that the chance of them having their leg blown out by it would be reduced if it's something they're more used to. So I think as long as we're
I think there are lines where I think there are lines where the argument doesn't really hold well.
I could be convinced.
Yashiro Yamashita, you saw happen to him before he won the Olympics.
Yeah.
That was bad. His was so bad.
It's what got the move banned.
He's so amazing that he walks out there in the finals hopping and throws the guy. Incredible.
Yeah. Yep. It was after that they banned it in judo. It was fine until the Japanese all-conquering wonderful player got injured, and then all of a sudden the rules changed.
Yeah, but even then, think about he's been training since he was a child.
Yeah, for sure.
Been in all the universities, all the exposure, and even in a moment of high urgency, when you don't want to get your knees bent, when you don't want to go down, man.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's the same, but from where I'm sat, it seems really similar to the people that talk about not letting their athletes explore heel hooks. Heel hooks are very injurious.
False. They're not dynamic.
Do people blow their knees out to heel hooks all the time?
No. It's actually the lowest injury rate of all submissions. Isn't that interesting?
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, like the amount of times that I see heel hook injuries is probably disproportionately high because people are sharing them.
Because the internet loves it. They love to hear that bone-breaking double snap of the shin. Just boom!
Yeah.
But so historically, arm locks have probably been the most damaging, or any arm-based submission, straight or twisting locks have been the greatest cause of injury.
Does that take into account frequency of submissions versus frequency of injury? Because I imagine there's way more arm locks, right? So there might be 10,000 arm locks and 10 injuries versus 5 and 1. But the 5 and 1 would be more as a percentage, if you see what I mean.
If the sample size is like everyone's attacking arm locks much more often, you're just going to, by the nature of that, you're going to see more injuries in that case.
So it's not that arm locks are more dangerous, it's just that they're more common, right? Or is it the case that they're more dangerous?
Legs are harder to break, and they require a level of force and precision that's very hard to get on a leg. A lot of the leg injuries that we see with heel hooks are a relationship between the person resisting the break and the person applying the break. It's not necessarily the break itself, but because being submitted heel hooks are very interesting. You don't really feel pain that much. It's not really, it really hurts in your ankle before you feel in your knee, just for the nature of the grip. So I think a lot of people overestimate that dealing with that, gritting down on that pain, and then you get the pop. But the thing is what's really interesting about heel hooks is, again, because we're usually binding both legs, because it's usually done in a grounded situation, the dynamics that usually cause those significant and acute injuries are actually removed. I feel it's one of the safer submissions, so we start our white belts with it.
Yeah, I have no issue with most safety things. I think we're essentially in a position as a combat sport, they're going to be doing things that have a high degree of risk. It behooves us as coaches to introduce that risk in a controlled, safe way. I can completely see an argument could be made for not doing lateral sacrifices because the degree of risk's high. I'd only be concerned that it might end up in a position that people aren't well coupled to that information source. So if they play against someone that specializes in that and they do it all the time and they're really good at it, they might not be able to pick up on what their opponent's doing and prevent it early enough. But as I say, it's your guys seem to be doing all right.
Yeah, I know you
they're
have
not
to.
bad.
I know you have to go, but again, this is why. And this actually, that statement you just said links back to why we do the outside passing game. And if I could just end with one little thing before we leave, it would be fantastic for me. If the sport demands the movement, it doesn't matter how you constrain it. So, for example, let's say we're working on entanglements, and I'm playing a game where I'm entangled, and I must stay entangled, and I must hold you down. I must perform the central function of the entanglement, which is to stay attached and hold you relatively still to the floor. If I just keep switching your leg around, catching, switch your leg around, catching, this is highly representative of what's required of moving a leg.
Why
So
am I moving
when
the
we're
leg?
inter-
Sorry. What's the action
Excuse me?
coupled to? What's the action coupled to? Why am I moving a leg? Is it to gain heel exposure for a heel hook? Why am I moving it? To stop you standing?
So you're moving a leg to intentionally learn how to move a leg.
Sure, no, but what's the
So
behavior that I'm coupling that action against, if you see what I mean?
you're coupling it against connecting to the hip, staying connected, holding the hip down, which are two precursors to breakability.
What's my opponent doing? Sorry, what are they trying to achieve?
Your opponent is trying to separate the connections and pull their leg free while working to their feet. So they're trying to negate what the entanglement is functionally trying to do.
Cool. So passing the foot stops them from being able to stand up.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
But passing the foot itself is how we could deal with standing. Let's say, for example,
only if it's coupled to that action, right?
Well, again, it depends on what level of what scale we're exposing our students to. If the informational demands and the action to fidelity are beyond the capacity of the practitioner, then by constraining it, we afford greater opportunity to functionally perform what the entanglement is used for. We increase the scale of specificity relative to the growing capacity and coordination pattern of the athlete. So, and I'm not clicking on a computer. So, well, we take the leg from one side of the body to the other because that is a demand within entanglements. Being able to expose the heel on one side, facing resistance, and being able to move it to the other side is a common tactic we use to keep that leg vulnerable to further and future attack. So if we were to only tactically optimize, let's say a straight side catch, and we never got exposed to switching the leg under duress, then we would not have that capacity or skill when it was demanded of us in the performance context.
Yeah, I almost agree with you completely, except for the fact that I don't need to move a leg from one side to the other arbitrarily. I'm moving a leg from one side to the other to achieve a task goal, which makes it specifying.
The task goal is moving the leg.
Sure, but
it
for
doesn't
what
have
for
to
what
be
purpose? So
to
what
be
I mean,
able to move a leg.
No, but it's not being able to move a leg. It's being able to move a leg under conditions. This is what CLA is. It's not arbitrary movement. It's coupled to a behavior. So the behavior of passing.
So then you agree with my position then?
No, I agree with most 90%, as is always the case. If I have your foot here, why would I pass it to here? For me, I pass it from here to gain heel exposure. You might be hiding your heel really effectively, so I pass it across my body so I can get heel exposure.
Well, wait. Why else would you do it?
Maybe to stop you standing? Don't know.
Why else?
I don't know. You tell me.
I know probably every reason why you'd want to move a leg, because this is what I'm an expert in, not actually CLA.
So but why? But why? Why would you? I've got heel exposure, and maybe to prevent them standing. If I put it on the opposite side, it might make it harder for them to get their foot down and turn. What other things?
Nope. Coming up yourself.
Yep. Being able to create paths towards the hip, absolutely. Being able to create paths towards connection to the other leg. Being able to resist forward motion. Being able to resist rotation or follow rotation. So what's interesting is all of these things are contingent on my ability to move a leg.
But
So the condition,
those things inform how you move a leg. That's the central problem, right? If I'm
no,
not able to move a foot
those
to gain
things
heel exposure,
inform.
it's
Those
not
things
coupled to that
inform.
action. This is the
This is
problem.
not correct. Those, listen,
For the
if
listeners,
I
it
can
is
do a
correct.
thing, if I can do a thing, if I have the capacity to do a thing, when the opportunity is afforded to me to produce the function that requires the doing of the thing, I'm more likely to pick up the affordances available in that given exchange.
So we're back to punch me in the body, but I'm just going to defend like this. The behavior that you're coupling your action to isn't specifying. If my
Because you
elbows,
think
if my
that's
elbows are just on my rib cage, and your task is to punch me in the body, we're punching people in the body. That's an action we do in boxing.
this is
This is
incorrect because
decoupled. This isn't
listen,
specifying.
it
My
isn't
behavior
decoupled. Listen,
isn't specifying. This is
an
the central
entanglement
problem.
function. Wait, before we go, I got to make this clear. I'm sorry. An entanglement function fundamentally is to stay attached to and isolate the leg from everything else. Everything that we use the entanglement for is specific to our intended goal. But if we are not able to keep the hip and ankle attachment and keep the leg away from the body, we cannot do things that require that.
Sure, but the behavior of the person of the person trying to not let their foot get past isn't specifying. They're not behaving in a way
It is.
it's, of course
Do you
it's not.
understand?
Yeah.
Yes. This again. This is again. I know. I know you got to go. Please, please, please. This is really important. This is so important. The reason I said earlier that I can tell by your explanation that you don't understand the nature of grappling in our context is not because I'm trying to diminish you or minimize you. But what I'm trying to show you based on your explanation is that you think the only reason we move a leg is because we need heel exposure. This is incorrect. There are many reasons why we move a leg. A lot of it has to do with maintaining attachment and isolation of that leg from everything else. So it's actually coupled to its central function, not its specific function, which in this case would be heel exposure for submission. That is just a possibility within the landscape of affordances that entanglements offer.
No,
That's it.
So I have moved your foot
So
to my right hand side, and now I'm moving your foot to my left hand side. Okay? To what end am I looking to expose a heel? Am I trying to stop you from standing?
If you are
Your behavior is important for why I am doing it and how I do
100%.
it. If you're not trying to hide your heel, when I move your foot, it isn't coupled to moving a foot of somebody trying to hide their heel. If you're not trying to stand up,
because you're not always trying to hide your heel.
Sure, but there has to be a behavior that you are trying to achieve, not just prevent you moving your foot.
You were trying to extract your leg from the entanglement and return to the standing position.
Perfect.
This is the central engagement.
So we're moving a foot to stop them standing. Perfect.
That is one reason why we are moving the foot.
Sure, you can layer in different reasons, but it is coupled to a behavior of our opponent. Our opponent's trying to stand. I'm exploring the relationship between moving a foot and preventing a stand. There's perception action coupling to specifying information. That is fine. There is a task goal they're trying to achieve that informs their behavior, which means I pick up on relevant information and couple my action to it.
So we are in fact not in disagreement over the way that I design the games, because everything that you are describing as necessary for something to be coupled and representative is present in every single game that I have ever designed.
I don't mean this as an attack at all, but I would disagree. I don't think that moving from one hip to the other
disagree
is
not as an expert in CLA. You are disagreeing with me based on what you think is contextually relevant in the game of jiu-jitsu. You're not disagreeing with me.
I'm saying that the behavior of this player isn't representative of a player doing BJJ. Because they're not behaving in a way that is indicative of how they would perform, there's low functionality and low action fidelity, which means there's very poor representativeness, which means there's low transfer and retention. So,
but this is the reason I listen.
I do have to go. I'll give you 2 minutes, 2 minutes, and then I have to go.
Okay, 2 minutes. So, for example, these games that you say are low in representation are the games we used for DeAndre to beat Diego Pato.
And other stuff, right? So, people say the drills that we do here are why Andre Galvao won this.
We filmed it, so we can show direct transfer. So we
for sure, but you've also done other stuff. He's also fighting some of the best people on earth all the time, right? It's impossible to draw a correlation.
No, it is not. It is not. It is not impossible, because what we've done is we've literally shown the path between the demands of how we oriented our training and what transferred into performance. So, for example, to stay connected to the hip, to prevent standing, and to transfer a straight leg to a cross leg was central to a lot of the task focus that we designed under the duress of someone standing, someone extracting a leg. What DeAndre did with that was specifying to the responses that Pato gave him. However, the skill to be able to do that, or the capacity to do that, was built on the foundation of those games in which we designed them. You can see a direct transfer from the practice tasks to the performance tasks, because it is perfectly aligned with what the literature says about how context and capacity affect performance. There is no disconnect between the designing of training and the performance outcomes.
You know, if Raddy Ferguson had said to you, I had my guys do kata, and there's direct transfer from them doing Nagano kata to them doing this throwing competition. I can show it you. Look, they're pulling the arm, they're pulling the head, they're moving their feet. You would just reject that. You'd say, well, yeah, but they're also competing against the best people on earth. And
not necessarily.
It seems as though that is
no, I wouldn't disagree with Roddy Ferguson necessarily.
I would.
If he
on most things
said that the entire practice was designed around forward throws, even his silly drills that I don't think transfer, what's more important to me, what I hear Roddy say, is not the specifics of what he does, but how he used the specifics to inform culture. Because there is something that's transferred just through intentional behavior that may not be optimized in the physical practice. And so we've seen this historically. We've seen how attention affects performance, even in suboptimal training environments. So because there is something at the base going on that CLA is trying to use to understand, to manipulate. And I think that thing is intentionality.
Yeah, for sure. So, any task, right? There's a
I'm
lower degree of squeeze from tasks. There's some value there. I just don't think it's great.
We intentionally trained DeAndre in a contextually relevant environment to perform these actions. And under state of urgency against the highest level player, he was able to perform the actions just as he did them in training. And so that's what I mean. There's a direct transfer. I'm not saying because we did it, therefore. I'm saying you can literally see it. Because we only do live work. We're not doing anything that's contextually irrelevant.
Yeah, but one would imagine that you're also playing more developed practice tasks that link those things. I'm saying that as a task at that reduced capacity, you're not coupling to specifying information. The behavior itself is non-specifying because the behavior doesn't have action fidelity. That's the problem. If you don't
have the capacity to perform an action, you do not have access to the specifying information that it affords.
That's why we go through that search space. The information has to be present. So if the information isn't present, I can't couple to that information. So being able to move from one side to the other can't happen if you aren't defending in such a way that this action would emerge. That's
what I'm saying. By trying to extract a leg and stand up,
you're going to get me in so much trouble.
Sorry. All right, Cal. I got you.
Cal, thank you so much. You can stay for a second and we let Cal go. Thank you so much. And of course, we can always resume for an episode 2. Thank you so much, Cal and Greg, for this valuable, informative, and thought-provoking episode. And raises questions like, how much should we rely on literature? Or how much weight can we give to anecdotal experiences? I definitely have follow-up questions for a potential second episode. To my listeners, please comment whether you would like to hear more of Greg and Cal regarding these and other topics. For now, thank you all for listening. Wishing you all a lovely remainder of the week.